Hi everyone. This is What If Fan, back with another new part of What If Ichigo had a different Zanpakuto. You can find the fanfic name and author in the description below. Please make sure to support the original author. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Alright, let's get started. Chapter 3. In the cloudless skies above Karakura, a set of shoji doors simply appeared out of thin air. They slowly opened, revealing an inner light shining from within. And then a buxom, red-headed woman wearing a shihakusho, a pink scarf, and a katana behind her waist was unceremoniously ejected from within. She landed in midair easily and looked down to make sure she hadn't slipped out of her uniform. Somehow, her breasts were still contained, so she turned to the doors. "Captain," she whined, turning on the crocodile tears, "come on. Surely you're overreacting. It was just an accident." From the shoji doors came a much smaller male. He had white hair in the same uniform she wore, though he also had a white haori with a green sash pinned with a star around his shoulder, which was strapping the sheathed katana behind his back. He was much younger in appearance than her, but evidently held a superior position. Normally cold in expression, the boy looked like he was very close to visibly seething. "No, Matsumoto," he said flatly, "you went too far this time, and what's done is done." "But Captain Dash." Matsumoto Ranjika tried to protest, but the white-haired boy cut her off flatly. "You've already been demoted to third seat." He looked like he was just barely keeping from snapping at her. "Shall I make it fifth?" Ranjika blanched, finally realizing how serious he was in punishing her. "I'm sorry." She managed to keep from yelping. "Well, sorry isn't going to bring back the 6 months of paperwork for the entire Seriitii you managed to destroy, you damned alcoholic." The boy yelled at her. "Do you have any idea how much important information could have been in that? But it's not fair. Why aren't Hisagi and IBA getting punished?" Ranjiku asked desperately. "They were responsible too. Why is it only me?" Hitsugaya Toshiro smirked mirthlessly. "Oh, they are. They were given to Kenpachi with explicit orders to, what was it? Do his worst for the entire month." Ranjiko turned pasty white, and held her hands up in prayer for her drinking buddies' souls. Hitsugaya snorted. "Regardless, what the other captains do with their lieutenants is their business. You, on the other hand, have been pushing most of your paperwork on me for months." He yelled, "Which means your idiocy didn't just ruin 6 months of my work. It destroyed 12. He yelled at the redhead, making her wince. "Since you clearly don't want to do the work, you don't deserve the position either." Ranjiko slumped in defeat. "My orders?" Toshiro grabbed both of the shoji doors. "You're to be stationed within the current Jurichi for a minimum of 1 month. Pray my mood has improved by the time you're allowed back. And if I smell even a drop of alcohol on you when you get back, I'm sending you right back out." He stepped back and slammed the doors shut before they dispersed into particles. Ranjiku winced at the noise, before slumping in depression. "Great job, Ranjiku." She mumbled to herself, "I don't think I've ever seen him so angry." She pinched the bridge of her nose. She still didn't even know how it had happened. She, Hisagi, and IBA had been no wilder than they normally were during their parties, and nothing like this had ever happened before. She didn't remember any of them doing anything that could have set off that fire. She sighed in self-recrimination. She knew she was a lazy cat and often messed with Toshiro, but she never wanted to actually make him mad. It was practically a game she played, with the boy who was basically her little brother. Maybe she should actually cut back some. She sighed and straightened out. "I'll apologize when the month is up." She mumbled, "Hopefully things are quiet. Who knows, maybe this will be like a vacation, and I'll even be able to try out some cute human clothes." She tried to perk herself up, but honestly, she still felt pretty guilty. Honestly, Ichigo probably should have stopped beating on the idiots on his turf years ago, but he honestly couldn't help it when they were this smooth-brained. "Shut the fuck up," he yelled, and the gang all cringed. "First question. What the hell is that?" He pointed at a small glass bottle that had fallen on its side. All of the water was leaking out of it, and parts of the neck had chipped off. Even the flowers inside were a little crushed. He glared at one of them. You. The smelly-looking dude. Answer. Smelly? The man pointed at himself. An offering for some dead kid? Lil Mitch? The other two yelped as Ichigo kicked him in the face with a congratulatory message. Check out the brains on Smelly. He glared at them. Question 2. Why is it on its side? They trembled. We knocked it over with our skate boards? Oh, is that so? Ichigo unleashed the shackles on his Ryatsu the tiniest amount, and to the delinquent's terror, a ghost became visible right beside him. The poor girl had floating little animated souls next to her, and the left side of her face was absolutely covered in blood. Then why don't you fucking apologize to her, huh? The remaining delinquents screeched and ran away sobbing their apologies out. Ichigo shook his head. Fucking morons. He groused, before turning to the ghost. Sorry Nika-chan. He patted her on the head. Hopefully they won't bother you again. It's okay, Ichi and I-san. Nika answered. Thanks for getting rid of them. Wish I could do more. Ichigo replied, if only I could manifest my damn Zanpakuto. Then I could send you on. He muttered under his breath. Did you say something, Nai-san? Nika didn't hear what he had said. Nah, just muttering to myself. He patted her on the head again. You rest in peace, Nika-chan. Try to find the next life. You don't want to stay around here too long. Okay. Will I see you again, Nai-san? Nika beamed at him. Yeah, I'll bring some fresh flowers tomorrow. Ichigo told her and gave her a smile. See you around? He waved at her before departing. It took only a few minutes more before he got home, and he called out, I'm home. Upon walking in. You're late. His father threw a flying spin kick at him the second the door was closed. Ichigo caught it with one hand with a roll of his eyes, before some quick twists had the both of them crashing to the floor with Isshin in an ankle lock. And you're slow. Get off my case. Karen laughed. Nice ankle lock, Ichi. Might want to call Uncle, Dad. Uncle. Uncle. Isshin cried out, tapping out on the wooden boards beneath them. Huh? What's that? Ichigo feigned deafness. I can't hear you over the sound of your rules being stupid. Isshin found his second wind, physically dragging Ichigo towards him with his leg and trying to throw his son. Ichigo simply let go and they were both on their feet in a flash. Stupid? I won't take that from a delinquent. Dinner at this house is 7 o'clock sharp. No excuses. The rules of my house are iron. You break 'em, you gotta bleed. I've been breaking iron since I was 13, so your rules are too flimsy. Ichigo replied, ducking under a punch, and grabbing his dad from behind. Karen had gotten up with a piece of steak in her mouth, and casually pushed a collapsing table behind the two idiots. Ichigo hauled his dad up in a textbook German suplex and shattered the table, leaving Isshin moaning in the pile of wood with his leg twitching in the air. Nice assist, Karen. He high-fived his sister. What's for dinner, Yuzu? Rice and some marinated steak. Yuzu replied brightly, come eat before it gets cold. She twitched. Oh, Ichi, you got another one. What? Ichigo looked. Oh, for crying out loud. He glared at the middle-aged ghost. Sorry. Fresh out of exorcisms today. Go bother someone else, he groused, falling into his seat at the table and smiling at Yuzu as he accepted his bowl. You should just not believe in them. Like me. Karen finished her piece of steak and took a drink. Huh? Yuzu turned to her, but you can see them too. And so can I. They're just a little fuzzy. And? Karen deadpanned, if I don't believe in them, it's like they don't exist. I'm in permanent denial. The ghost stared at her in dumbfounded shock. He even looked like a bit of snow was settling on his shoulders. Ichigo snorted, I think that ship has sailed. He took a bite of his steak before rolling his eyes. Dad, if you attack me while I'm eating, I'm making you eat the plate. Isshin froze behind him and teared up, before he ran to the poster of their mom, Masaki. Our children are so mean to me. Maybe it's because they just hit puberty, but even our daughters are treating me like crap. What do I do? Maybe stop being a preschooler inside a 40-year-old body. Ichigo threw at him lackadaisically. And take down that poster of mom while you're at it. It's embarrassing. Karen followed up, making Ishin sag in front of the poster. Ichigo quickly finished up his dinner before standing, delicious as always, Yuzu. He pecked his other sister on the top of her head. It was a long day, so I'll be upstairs if you need me. He rubbed the back of his head after ruffling Karen's hair and making his way upstairs. He opened the door to his room and completely froze. Lord Buddha, what do you feed those things? He couldn't help but repeat what Thor had said the first time they had met Oraheim. Standing in his room was an utterly gorgeous, grown woman with striking, brilliantly red hair. She was wearing what looked like a pretty old-style uniform, but while the style may have been ancient, her way of wearing it sure wasn't. In fact, he was pretty sure if she bounced on her heels, her boobs would fall out, seeing as the shihakusho was open to just above her navel. She also had a pink scarf wrapped around her shoulders and arms, and she had a katana hanging behind her back. The woman ignored him. No, he didn't think she even realized he was speaking to her. What is this pressure? She mumbled to herself as she looked off to the side, it's like it's drowning out my dash. Right, that was enough of that. Ichigo used Sonito to grab her and flipped her right onto his bed. She let out a squeal of shock as she landed, her bountiful bosom bouncing before his eyes. That get your attention? She gaped at him. Why, you can see me? She shook her head. Wait, forget seeing. You can touch me? Oh, are you still stuck on that? Ichigo snarked, letting her go. Who the hell are you and why are you in my house? He stared at her as she rolled and got to her knees on his mattress. You don't look like any ghost I've ever seen. He leaned closer. Where's your spirit tail thing, and what's with the getup? Spirit tail thing? Ranjiko asked cluelessly. Ichigo rolled his eyes. Section. He went back into the hall and grabbed the middle-aged ghost and hauled him into the room. See? He pointed to the wispy tail that had replaced the man's legs. Oh. Ranjiko blinked, before starting to giggle into her hand. Wow, I can't say I expected tonight to go like this. She tilted her head. Let's see. I'm Matsumoto Ranjiko. Kurosaki Ichigo. He saw her eyes flip to his hair, and immediately a vein started throbbing on his head before she even opened her mouth, and it stands for He Who Protects, got it? Her expression must have given her away because she had immediately given him a Cheshire cat grin upon hearing his name. And seeing how irritated it made him, she couldn't just let it go. Whatever you say, Strawberry-chan. You wanna die, huh? His expression must have been hilarious because it set her off on another set of giggles. He growled, anyway, what are you doing in my house? A demonstration maybe? Ranjiko replied with a smile, before she reached behind her and drew her blade. Ichigo's eyes widened. Wait, is she? She walked over and tapped the hilt of her blade to the middle-aged man's head, leaving a red stamp on his forehead that started to glow purple. No! The man wailed, I don't want to go to hell. You won't, mister. You're heading for Soul Society. Ranjiko reassured him, before he sank backwards into a glowing purple portal that shut behind him. The final remnant of his presence was a black swallowtail butterfly flapping its wings as it exited the portal. She smiled and sheathed her blade. As you can see, I'm Dash. A Shinigami. Ichigo shuddered in rapture. She blinked in more shock. You even EP. She squeaked as Ichigo crossed the distance between them in a blink and grabbed her hands in an almost prayer-like motion. Please tell me how Tio get one of those. He blurted rapidly. She stared at him, before taking a step back. One of those? She grabbed her Haniko's hilt. You mean my Zanpakuto? Sorry Berry-chan, you need to go through the Shinori Jutsuin. And you kinda need to be dead for that, and I'm not volunteering. Ichigo looked crestfallen. Anywhere I can steal one? Ranjiko snorted, no. She said flatly, and if there was, why would I dash? Gray. Ichigo flinched as the loud noise penetrated his ears. What the fuck? What? Ranjiko blinked in shock again as Ichigo's eyes snapped to his wall. What's the dash? Gray. She drew in a shuddering breath. Wait, how did you hear that before me? But Ichigo didn't answer, because he had leapt over his bed towards the window, slammed it open, and jumped outside in one smooth motion. Wait! She shouted at his back, trying to follow him out. You're no match for a dash. Alright, you fish-faced asshole. Ichigo landed in front of his house right as the hollow was about to break in. Get the fuck away from my house. He blitzed forward and punched the hollow in its torso, sending it flying away. Ranjiku almost tripped at the window and had to hold herself up from how great her shock was. Ichigo cracked his knuckles. You fuckers know the rules. Don't come near my family. Ichigo, stop. Brute force can't dash. Ranjiku had one leg out the window and was calling out to him when Ichigo started to crackle with lightning. The amount of Ryatsu in the air almost had her choking in shock. It's him. She realized, dumbfounded, he's the reason my senses feel scrambled in this area. Her jaw dropped as he thundered forward faster than she could Shunpa. It was clear he had some sort of equivalent technique because he vanished even from her disbelieving gaze. Unlike the swishing sound of Shunpa, this sounded more like a faraway crackle of thunder. With her jaw unhinged, she watched as Ichigo pounded another fist into the hollow's mask. The bolt of lightning he shot from his fist lit up the night sky and practically vaporized the hollow as it passed through its skull. It rapidly dispersed into spirit particles. As she landed near him, she felt the souls the hollow had consumed passing on towards the Soul Society. Something which shouldn't have been possible for a non-Shinigami to do. What are you? She asked, wondering how in the hell this was possible. Ichigo turned to her, smirking. Like he knew he was hot shit. And she had to hold back a groan as she realized it was working. She hadn't really noticed before, but he was damn hot. He was at least 6 feet tall and had really packed on some good muscle from his training with Thor. He went to respond, but both of their eyes widened as more roaring started making the area rumble. Gray. 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 Ranjiku used Shunpa to get close to him, drawing her Zanpakuto. How did 6 hollows sneak up on me? She cried out as plumes of dust and cracked concrete erupted close to them. This is your fault, Ichi. Your Ryatsu is drowning my senses. Get ready to fight. Ichigo wasn't nervous, but he was wary. These 5 definitely weren't run-of-the-mill hollows. And Ranjiku's sharp gasp proved that wariness correct. All 5 of them were huge hollows. Shit. Ranjiku swore under her breath. She was so glad she had been demoted and put on this mission. A regular Shinigami would have been a waste of space if this was what the Jurichi was like. All 5 of these seemed very close in power to Aminos, though they weren't quite there yet. But the fact that they were working together was very much cause for concern because it went against what she knew about the beasts. She wouldn't be able to take this lightly, and her next action proved how serious she was. She grabbed both the hilt and the saya of her Zanpakuto and drew them from her belt. Erupt. Leave naught but cinders in your wake, Haniko. Her sword and sheath started to glow red in her hands, before they warped. The blade and saya shortened just a tad, but what they lost in length they more than made up for in width. In her hands were now 2 blades. They were massive, angry, jagged-looking things that really did not look like they could possibly be useful as swords. They had many different hollows and turns, with frankly silly geometry. And every single edge was beyond razor sharp. The guards were far more ornate than they really had any right to be, looking like snarling panther heads trying to swallow the blades. Finally, what looked like swirling ashes were coming from the hilts and chaining around her arms. Ichigo looked on in awe. I've got to get me one of those. Why? She snorted at his awe. You look like you've got hollows around here locked down tight. I can't kanso with my fists. Do you have any idea how annoying these fucking ghosts are? Without waiting for a reply, Ichigo shot off towards the closest one, sending him towards the bigger group of 3. Ranjiku laughed at that. Well, I guess I can unday dash. She leapt, avoiding the bala that one of the hollows had just shot at her. The attack shattered the pavement where she had been standing, leaving her to land on a lamp post. Rude. She huffed, before leaping and raising her blades behind her head. She swung them forward, letting go of the swords, sending them flying. The ashes around her forearms looked almost solid, chaining the weapons to her. The hollow she was targeting was too slow to react, and just barely dodged them. Or so it thought, because the ashes connected to her ignited, burning bright and racing down to the blades. They ignited and what seemed like a volcanic eruption blasted at the hollow. The hollow howled in agony as the molten pavement impacted it, making its skin start to hiss and bubble from the sheer heat. Damn you, Shinigami! It howled furiously, revealing its intelligence. Yuck! Keep your mouth shut, honey. Ranjiku told it playfully. Die! The second of the two hollows roared, opening its maw, which disgorged a nasty-looking green liquid which rapidly started solidifying in midair. TCH. Ranjiku clicked her teeth in annoyance. I hate when they have special abilities. You never know what they do. She complained childishly as she jerked her wrists. Hiniko returned to her hands, before she threw one straight into the air and started spinning it around her body so quickly it looked like a buzzsaw. Pyroclastic flow. She called out, ashes leaking from the chains and engulfing her in a tornado of ashes. The hollow's attack approached rapidly and seemed to impact the tornado, splattering everywhere. What few bits of it that touched the ground seemed to start to hiss as it ate through the concrete, proving it was highly acidic. The rest of it stretched around her with the consistency of taffy or gum before it started to rapidly heat up and turn to cinders. The ashes continued to spiral around her, up towards the night sky. Inside the cyclone, Ranjiku took a step forward, spun once, and then swung her blades in a wide arc. The tornado raced forward, engulfing the hollow. It howled in agony as the ash started to practically shred it, drawing blood, and adding it to the ashes, turning it into a wet mess that caked onto it, slowing it, and stopping it from moving well. No! I'm so close. I can't die here. I won dash. One of Hiniko's blades impacted it clean in the chest. Sorry. Better luck next time. Ranjiku winked at it with an arm extended. And then the ash chain ignited, and the hollow almost immediately started burning from the inside out. It dispersed, freeing thousands of souls. I wonder how Ichi-chan is doing. Well. The answer was well. Is that all you got? Ichigo cackled as he grabbed one of their arms. Ichigo discharged his electricity, stunning the hollow and preventing it from moving. He let go of its arm and kicked it onto its back before grabbing its leg. He started to spin wildly, lifting it clean off its feet. It looked utterly hysterical, what with him being just over 6 feet tall and the hollow being 35. He was so glad he had kicked his first target over to the nearby park. He suspected the other three wouldn't have followed, but a quick taunt had them angry and stupid in chasing after him, which he was about to use to his advantage, and he steps up to the plate. He stomped his foot, swing. It's a home run. He had always wanted to beat a motherfucker with another motherfucker. The first hollow's head smashed straight into the other, cracking both of their masks and causing them to howl in pain. Ichigo quickly turned to the third of them, a lizard-like beast on all four legs with a mask shaped like an eagle's head. It screeched at him, and despite being the closest to becoming a Minos among the three, it would have been a garden variety one due to its mindless lack of real intelligence. But that didn't mean it couldn't fight. It raised up onto its hind legs before slamming down. The earth erupted in front of it, bursting in a series of shockwaves that raced towards Ichigo. The erupting plumes smashed into him, forcing him back a step, before he roared and pulsed his Ryatsu around him. The dust cleared, and his eyes widened as the hollow had vanished. And then the earth beneath him rumbled, and the beast burst out from underneath him, chomping down with crushing force. Gah! He shouted as the air was driven from his lungs, blood escaping his mouth. Its jaws had actually been strong enough to penetrate his arrow. He quickly ignited his veins, increasing his defensive power and keeping it from biting clean through him. Even his right leg hadn't escaped, with the secondary set of jaws chomping on it. He raised his one free arm and slammed it down on the hooked beak, piercing his diaphragm, shattering it. The hollow went mad with rage and agony as it lost part of its mask, and it started to thrash with him inside its maw. It reared up and threw itself forward, driving him into the ground. His head split open from the impact, and he had enough. Roaring furiously, Ichigo wrenched open its jaws, before he kicked down at the secondary set and freed his other leg. Another kick had the hollow gagging as its inner teeth shattered and rained down its gullet. Ichigo escaped, fuming that his lapse of attention had led to his worst injury from a hollow fight in over 2 years. He focused his Ryuryoku, rapidly regenerating. "Alright, you big-beaked turd. No more Mr. Nice Ichigo." He used Sonito to mount it and speared his hands into its back, before igniting them with electricity. The hollow lit up like a Christmas tree, its skeleton flashing. It fell back to the ground and Ichigo stood, before stomping. His attack split the hollow in half, and it started to disperse into spirit particles. He glared at the other two, and saw that one of them had gotten up and seemed to be bulging. Likely some special ability or another. Well, he definitely couldn't have that. Especially not so near to so many houses. His hand shot into his pocket and pulled out a coin. His hand started to spark, before his thumb jerked. The coin shot forward at hypersonic speed, piercing through its head in what looked like a bright lightning bolt. He glared at the last remaining hollow, who was still twitching from his earlier electrocution. With a quick sonito, he kicked it onto its back once more and reared his fist back. It crackled with electricity as he drove it down, piercing through its mask and shooting a lightning bolt into the sky. He landed, still irritated with himself, tchy fucking careless. He chided himself. Yeah, wasn't a great look. Thor confirmed with a growl, first time fighting an enemy that used the terrain in misdirection. Probably would have caught me as well. Good thing it was weak. Ichigo leapt up onto a light post and raced back to where he could sense Rangiku wrapping things up. Rangiku let out a satisfied sigh as she swung both her blades, slicing off the hollow's head. Well, that sure worked up an appetite. She resealed Heiniko and rubbed the back of her neck. I could sure use some sake, she said, before freezing as she remembered why she was even in the human world in the first place. Before she could worry about it any longer, her head snapped towards the lightning bolt that had shot into the clear sky, a ways away. I hope that none of that was visible with him still in a human body. She took a step to meet up with him before her senses screamed and she threw herself to the left. But it was too late. A squelch rang through the night, followed by the sound of splattering blood. Rangiku was on one knee, and she shakily looked down, seeing the tongue piercing straight through her chest from the other side. What? How did? She trembled as her head turned, and saw a sixth huge hollow that had hid itself perfectly. It was just now disengaging its camouflage, appearing out of thin air. No. She thought to herself as she felt her Ryuryoku start to go wild. No, not that. Her Ryatsu started to become visible as it leaked out of her from the damage to her Hakusui. Its tongue had snaked towards her rather than shooting in a straight line, so when she had thrown herself to the side, it had just nicked the vital pressure point. The hollow, sensing its meal getting less and less tasty by the second, wrapped its tongue around her and reeled her towards its mouth. And then Ichigo crashed down on it like a bolt of lightning, crushing its skull in one go. As it dispersed around him, he reached out and caught Rangiku. He cradled her and gently lowered himself to one knee. Shit. He didn't know any healing techniques. She grabbed his shirt and tried to speak, but nothing but a spurt of blood came out. Her sword turned into spirit particles and vanished, and her Shihakusho turned into a white robe as her Ryatsu died down to just a trickle. What the fuck? He blurted as she passed out in his arms. Shit. Rangiku, don't fall dash. Ichigo. His head snapped up and his eyes widened as he beheld his father. Shit, it had to be her, too. Quickly, lay her down. He was wearing the same Shihakusho Rangiku had been wearing. Ichigo's eyes bulged as he realized that meant his father knew this lady personally. Isshin kneeled in front of him and swore, damn it. That's her Hakusui. His hands glowed green and he held them above her wound. I can't heal this. Her Ryuryoku is leaking out. That's one of the two worst spots for a Shinigami to be pierced. The cuts closed up, but Rangiku remained unconscious. Is that what happened to you? Ichigo asked flatly. Ishin shook his head, no, and we'll talk about it later. Ishin said, I need to get her to a friend of mine. Kaido can't heal a damaged Hakusui or Seketsu. She'll need to be put in a Jigai to heal. I'll just pretend I know what any of that means. Ichigo said, before lifting her easily. Where to? No need. A new voice rang out, revealing a somewhat disheveled-looking man with light skin and gray eyes. His hair was messy and a rather ashy blonde, with strands framing the sides of his face and hanging between his eyes. He wore a dark green samu, and over it he had a black haori with a white diamond pattern along its bottom half. 6 huge hollows was more than enough of an attention grabber. I rushed over just in case. Kisuk. Can you help her? Ishin asked his apparent friend. Of course. You've stabilized her. We just need to get her into a Jigai. Kisuk replied. He took her from Ichigo, while Kurosaki-san, he smiled lackadaisically, I'll leave the two of you to it. Looks like you've got a bit of a sleepless night ahead of you. Oh yes. Ichigo said, causing Ishin to sweat lightly, I'm pretty sure we do. Kisuk inclined his head goodbye, before vanishing with a whisper of wind. Ichigo stared at his dad, so? You've been pretending to be unable to even see ghosts for 3 years. What's different now? They never dared come so close before, and Ranjiku being here is a surprise. It also means that things are starting to move. Ishin let out a sigh and ran his hand through his hair. Let's go back to the house, son. This isn't going to be a short conversation. Ichigo nodded and vanished with a crack of thunder. Damn, he's good at that. Despite himself, a proud smile rose on his face. He quickly took his phone out of his pocket and shot a very direct text to Kisuk, before he put it back in his Shihakusho and simply faded away, revealing an afterimage. So? You knew her? Ichigo asked his father. Ishin nodded sheepishly. She was my lieutenant back when I was captain of the 10th Division. Really makes me wonder what the hell she's doing here without even her lieutenant armband. Ichigo's eyes widened. Is that like in the army? You were an officer rank? Ha! No, we had much fewer positions. Ishin shook his head. There are 13 divisions, with the captain being the head honcho for the division. Only the captain commander was above us, and he was also the 1st Division's captain. Ichigo's eyes bulged. Holy shit. Ishin smirked. That's right. Your old man was a big deal. Actually, I was more shocked they let your preschooler ass be in charge of anything. Ichigo smirked as Ishin fell over. He got serious, alright. So, what the fuck happened? Ishin looked at him, rubbing his beard. Okay, how much do you know? Seeing as I'd happily have you as my lieutenant and not a single person could accuse me of favoritism or nepotism, it's far more than you should know. How did you manage that? Not much. Ichigo admitted, I met my Zanpakuto spirit years ago. Ishin snapped his finger at the confirmation of Kisuk's theory, and most of what I do know is just conjecture from him. I know that mom was some sort of magical girl. Ishin sputtered and sprayed his drink to the side before bursting into laughter. Wahaha. Oh, Masaki would have loved that. He crowed, before getting his chuckles under control. Ichigo snorted. It was pretty funny, and he guessed that my Shinigami powers came from you and not her. He also knew that somewhere, a hollow was involved because I have hollow powers. I only know simple stuff that Thor dash. Ishin sputtered, choking on his tea again. Thor? That's what he calls himself. Ichigo shrugged, and I don't exactly have anything to dispute that. He's huge, Viking, drinks mead like it's mother's milk, and has a giant freaking lightning hammer. His father goggled at him. That's... He rubbed his chin. That's very different from most Zanpakuto. He said, yeah, they're not exactly physical mirrors of us. Hell, my Injetsu is a fire demon. But I've never heard of any Zanpakuto claiming to be a mythological deity. He shook his head. We're getting sidetracked. We'll get back to that later. Sorry I interrupted you. Whatever. Ichigo shrugged and continued, I only know simple stuff that Thor was able to beat into me, along with a whole hell of a lot of combat practice in my inner world. High-speed regeneration? Ishin questioned, and got a nod from his son. Well, that explains why you stopped waking up with bruises. He mused under his breath. Is that everything? Yeah. Now what the hell is going on? Why did you pick now to reveal your powers? Why couldn't you save Mom, and how do I get a goddamn Zanpakuto of my own? Ichigo nearly snarled. That third one might have been a low blow. What do you mean? You said you know your spirit already. Ishin looked confused. The blade. Ichigo yelled, Thor, and I think that not having one is blocking me from hearing his real name. Not to mention that I can't console the damn ghosts without one. Ishin facebombed at the second reason. Of all the dash, he shook his head. I'll give Kasuga a call and see if he can't get his hands on an Asachi. It's the empty blade given to all Shinigami when they enter the academy. The Asachi eventually becomes the Zanpakuto. Ichigo nearly sagged in relief, and Thor started getting excited inside of him. He sighed. As for the rest of your questions, initially, I wasn't. But I felt Ranjika get injured, and with the way her Ryatsu started to go out of control, I knew it was pretty bad and she was going to be out of commission. Meaning she'd need someone to help her with her duties, and you fit the bill. If I still know her half as well as I remember, she took a liking to you and will want to crash here, meaning she'd dash. Recognize her old captain immediately. Ichigo finished, revealing a twitching eyebrow. Why did you never tell us? Were you ever going to tell us? Well, for one, you never actually asked. Ishin laughed at the look of rage on his son's face. He seriously looked like he was going to blow a gasket. He focused again. In all seriousness. Ishin sighed again. Eventually. He said heavily, your mother and I never wanted any of you to be wrapped up with the dead, but you were determined to be ever since you were a baby. Back then, neither Masaki nor I could even use our powers anymore, and by the time she died, only she could. I was still practically powerless. I couldn't even feel it when she was gone. He clenched his fist, and Ichigo's hard stare softened. He pulled his dad into a hug for the first time in years, and the man let out a shuddering breath. After that, I really didn't want to bring you into this world, and once you kicked the door open anyway, you were doing so many impossible things that we decided to let you keep on your own path without any biases from us. We just kept a close eye to make sure you were never in danger. Well, I suppose if there were any reason to not speak up. Ichigo muttered, still, it would have been really useful if you had. You know that Tatsuki, Oraheim, and Chad all have powers as well, right? Ishin blinked. Oh, well, shit. Ichigo coughed in surprise. You didn't? How? Well, in my defense, I'm kind of just getting back into the swing of things. Until I'm at full strength, your Ryatsu will be stronger than mine to such a degree that you'll blot out my senses. Ishin replied. Ichigo winced. Ranjiku said the same thing. Okay, so I'm assuming you were able to teach them something, right? Ishin asked him. Yeah. Ichigo said, before he raised his arm in front of him and allowed his veins to light up with power. I was able to teach them this, and they eventually developed some weird abilities of their own. No idea what they are. Blood Vene? Ishin gaped. Wait, you have Quincy abilities too? The hell is a Quincy? Ichigo asked, though he was glad to finally have a name for that particular power. Oh, for crying out! Ishin stopped and took a breath. Okay. Let me start from the beginning. He paused and then stared uncharacteristically hard at his son. Let me be blunt, Ichigo. Whatever you were expecting of the afterlife and us losing our powers, you were underestimating it. I want to be very clear here. If this is too much for you, or you want nothing to do with it, that is your choice. None of us are going to force you to participate in any of this. Ichigo stared at him for a few seconds, surprised at how serious his father was being. All right. Lay it on me. Ishin nodded. The first thing you should know is that the current situation goes back more than 100 years. There has been a conspiracy within the Gotei 13 lasting at least that long. At minimum, there are 2, maybe 3 captains that only have their own interests and goals in mind. One of them in particular was responsible for an incident 100 years ago that led to 8 captains and lieutenants suffering from hollowification, which is just about as deadly and nasty as it sounds. Imagine someone stronger than you being turned into a mindless hollow. Ichigo stared at him with his jaw slightly unhinged. We're not sure exactly what the mastermind is after, but at the very least, he's aiming to breach the gap between Shinigami and hollow. Something which will make him and his conspirators orders of magnitude more powerful than a pure being of either kind could ever be. We also know that the ringleader has some kind of illusionary-based Zanpakuto of extreme power and capability, which is how he is able to get away with so many of his misdeeds. He currently has the complete trust of the Gotei 13, and that makes him a dangerous enemy. My friend from before, Urahara Kisuke, was the lead scientist in the Suriitai as the captain of Division 12, and he had created a device which was capable of doing what the mastermind desired. Fearing his invention, he attempted to destroy it, but was unable to do so. Once the 8 were hollowified, Kisuke was able to use his device to stabilize their souls. Unfortunately, the mastermind used that to his advantage, and was able to frame Kisuke and one other for the incident. Kisuke was to be stripped of his power and exiled to the human world, and all of the victims were to be put to death. Ichigo had slowly grown more and more horrified at what he was hearing, but that did it. What the fuck? Ichigo leapt to his feet, completely incensed. What the fuck do you mean they sentenced all of them to death? None of the victims had any fault at all. Isshin sighed, and therein lies the biggest of Soul Society's problems. Before the Gotei 13, the afterlife was completely lawless. A feudal society, with all that entails. Ichigo grimaced. If you had power, you did anything you wanted until you died once more, throwing you into reincarnation. After the founder of the Gotei 13 established order, a government rose. Unfortunately, that government was full of nobles who did not want to share power. This, in conjunction with the fact that souls, and especially powerful souls, are extremely long-lived, meant that Soul Society has really barely moved past that initial state. Imagine a Japan just barely into the Meiji Reformation being stuck that way for 1,000 years and you'll have an idea. The Central 46 holds all the power over laws and sentencing and is made up of 40 wise men and 6 judges. Whatever they decree is law, and because they operate with the authority of the Soul King, no one dares to challenge their rulings even if they have the power to. That's disgusting. Ichigo spat, clenching his fists in fury. It was normal for me. Isshin shrugged. It's only now that I've lived in a modern society that I realize just how fucked up it all actually was. I'm only giving you the basic details. It's actually even worse. Ichigo sparked, a small tongue of lightning striking his comforter and lighting it on fire. He yelped and hurried to put it out, while his father first gawked and then burst into laughter. That's... I don't even know what to say to that. Ichigo was blushing slightly as he glared at his father. Isshin nodded grimly. Right. So, the 8 victims were sentenced to death for, well, being victims. All hollows are to be put to death, after all. It is the Shinigami's mandate. Kisuke and his friend Tsukabashi Tessai were to be permanently banished and imprisoned respectively. Fucking blow it all up. It's all broken. Ichigo grumbled. You're not wrong. Isshin sighed, but that is just history. Kisuke, Tessai, and all 8 of the captains and lieutenants were able to escape with the help of one last friend, Shihoin Yoruchi. Aizen Sasuke, the mastermind, was able to get away with it, and continued whatever experiments he was performing after getting wind of Kisuke's invention. Fast forward to 18 years ago. I was captain of the 10th Division as I said, and we got a report stating that a Shinigami had died while on patrol in Naruki City. A month later, we got a report saying the cause was still unconfirmed, but that 2 more had died. I left on an unauthorized mission to the city and ended up facing a hollow that was extremely powerful, and yet seemed to be mindless. Ones that powerful are generally very intelligent, so it was strange. While fighting, I was attacked from behind by an enemy I couldn't see, and because of the injury I was unable to fight at full power and was being defeated by the hollow. Aizen? Ichigo asked. His illusions would have kept you from seeing him, right? Not sure, but it's the most likely scenario. Isshin confirmed. In any case, I'm there getting my ass beat, and then Masaki showed up. There I am, a Shinigami captain, and this wonderfully brave girl who has to know that the Soul Society and Quincy don't get along pops in, and she just starts blasting the hollow to save my life. Wait, why don't they get along? Ichigo asked in confusion, and what are Quincy anyway? Quincy. Ishin took a breath and then a drink, are humans who gained enough Ryuryoku to start developing spiritual powers of their own. And that creation is the entire problem. These were humans who at one point had no idea what had been attacking them for generations. All they knew was that their people occasionally got savaged by something they couldn't see. And then they could see them, and saw their brothers and sisters and mothers and sons get eaten by monsters. They developed a method of killing them. Ishin closed his eyes and bowed his head, only they had no idea what they were doing. They knew nothing of the afterlife or of reincarnation or how the balance of souls in each world must be maintained. Hollows eat souls and hoard them inside their bodies. Shinigami slay hollows, freeing all of the souls inside of them. And more importantly, we allow the dead to move on from this world, where they do not belong. The balance of souls is precarious, and maintaining it is the most important goal of the Gotei 13. The Quincy were outsiders who knew nothing, and so they developed the worst possible method of dealing with their attackers. He opened his eyes and stared sadly at Ichigo. When Quincy's kill hollows, the beasts aren't purified. They are eradicated, destroying every single soul they have consumed, and removing them from the cycle of reincarnation. Ichigo choked, letting out a horrified noise. You're kidding. Even Thor felt like he was unsettled slightly at the revelation. I'm not. Ishin said heavily, and if all they did was defend themselves, it would have been one thing. But for the Quincy, hollows had been massacring them for years. Hollows devour the souls of humans, so why do those who harm and kill friends and relatives get sent peacefully to Soul Society? And so, they decided to massacre them in return. The Quincy didn't only defend. They attacked with the intent of wiping out hollows. And that eventually got the Siriitei's attention. The Shinigami tried to get the Quincy to stop. To explain that what they were doing threatened all of life. To leave the hollows to the Shinigami and only defend themselves if needed. But the Quincy didn't care, leading to war. I'm sure you can guess what the result of that was. Fuck. They killed most of them, didn't they? Ichigo bit his fist, raging at the idea of a genocide that was done because if they didn't, the world might have been destroyed. Twice. Ishin sighed heavily. The Quincy had an emperor 1,000 years ago, and he wanted to conquer Soul Society itself. They failed, and were almost entirely wiped out. The Sotecho was much more bloodthirsty in his youth. It's part of the reason he gave up so much authority to the Central 46. Pockets of the Quincy remained, and were able to rebuild without their emperor, leading to the situation being reignited 800 years later. Again, the Shinigami tried to reason with them, and again, they were rejected at every turn, leading to another massacre. Ichigo ran his hand through his hair. This is just awful all around. Ishin finished, but regardless, Masaki saved me, and for some reason the hollow turned around and started targeting her. She couldn't hit it. It was too fast and agile. So that crazy woman allowed the hollow to get in close. It bit her, and she held it down so she could blast its head off at point blank. Ishin laughed. I swear, it was love at first sight, even if I didn't realize it until long after. Ichigo smiled at the thought that his mom was such a badass. Unfortunately, things weren't all fine. I returned to Soul Society and escaped punishment, but I could not get Masaki out of my head. I again came to the human world in secret, and discovered that the hollow's bite had infected her. She had a hole in the middle of her throat, like she was hollowfying. Ichigo looked utterly horrified at the news, and that was exactly what was happening. Kisuke had run into her and had her under observation, since he recognized the signs. When she collapsed, the family she had been living with rushed her out of the house, running into me. Kisuke found us and offered to help save her life. He had been studying hollowification for almost a century after all, and had found a way to keep a hollowfying soul from committing soul suicide. In layman's terms, think of it like the soul being a matter-antimatter reaction and annihilating itself. How? Ichigo asked him. From what his father was describing, It sounded like his mother should have died. Did he use his invention? No. Ishin shook his head. He created a vaccine, but it could only prevent soul suicide. It did nothing for the process of hollowification. For that, there needed to be a constant presence diametrically opposed to the hollowification to keep it suppressed. The opposite of a hollow is a human, and the opposite of a Quincy is a Shinigami. Kisuke had created a special Jigai which would give a Shinigami an actual human body, rather than the facsimile they normally used, making them the polar opposite of a hollowifying Quincy and able to keep the hollowification at bay. My soul was bound to Masaki's for the rest of her life, and it was the easiest decision of mine. Ishin smiled. Like I said, it was love at first sight, and being able to be by her side for the rest of her life? I'd take that any day. Ichigo closed his eyes, smiling and feeling happy for both of his parents. He only wished that they hadn't had that happiness torn from them. That his family hadn't lost her. But unlike long ago, the thought didn't burn within him. He still wanted to rip the hollow responsible limb from limb, but there wasn't a threat of him drowning his inner world anymore. He looked at his dad. I just wish she was still here. Me too, kid. Me too. Ishin said before continuing his story. Urahara helped me open up the clinic, since that was the one skill I had which translated over to the human world. Before too long, Masaki and I had married, and then you were born. He chuffed. Both of us had minuscule powers left after the incident, but we had enough power to still sense Ryatsu. We worried because even as a baby, you had enough to perhaps draw a hollow if it was close enough to you. We had no way to protect you, with both of our powers gone. Mine because of the Jigai, and Masaki's because of the hollow. And then something quite unexpected happened. He winced slightly. Masaki's power started coming back. Because the hollow had migrated to me. Ichigo said flatly. Got it in one. Ishin looked uncharacteristically timid at the moment. We were terrified of what that meant for you, but Urahara never could find anything, and nothing bad ever seemed to happen. And at the very least, Masaki could now defend us. My powers had started returning too, but it was at a glacial pace compared to hers. By the time of the attack, she had been back to full strength, while I wasn't even at the level of an academy student. Even now, years later, I still haven't recovered fully. Urahara had never actually designed this Jigai to allow the recovery of spirit power, and we were afraid that if I left it, the hollow inside you might become active. So, I never did, and then a hollow that your mom should have been able to kill with the greatest of ease got her. We never figured out how or why. Ichigo looked down, and thought back to that day. Dad. There was something about that night I never told anyone else. Ishin's eyes widened, mostly because I didn't believe what I was seeing at the time. Not until Thor started training me. He took a breath and locked eyes with his dad. Mom had been protecting me. I saw her bow. But before she could fire, a massive light shone from above and engulfed her. When it vanished, so did her bow. Ishin's eyes were wide with shock as he stared at his son. The last thing I remember was her diving for me in a panic, and then nothing. This. Ishin gnawed on his knuckle. I have no idea what that means, but it is important. I know it. I'll have to speak with Kisuke about it. Maybe he knows more. Right. Ichigo said, so where do we go from here? And when are we going to tell Karen and Yuzu? They both can see ghosts, which means they're going to be targets. We can't be everywhere. For certain, we can begin training you in full, if you're interested. Ishin said, and we'll have to try to figure something out for your friends as well, if they are. As for the girls. He chewed on his knuckle again. I suppose you're right. We'll have to get them caught up with the less dangerous stuff. I imagine I can start teaching them Kido if nothing else. Obviously I am. Ichigo said, before smirking, like hell I'm going to leave an evil megalomaniac to your ass. Ho! Cocky little shit, huh? Ishin raised an eyebrow. I'll admit, I expected that part of the story to throw you off. Dad, the first thing Thor ever did when we met in my dreams was throw his hammer at my face. Ichigo deadpanned, making his dad choke, and quite frankly, I've got Thor in my head. I've long since given up on anything normal, and I love fighting. Well, Ishin cleared his throat, that's that, I suppose. I don't want to interrupt Kasuke while he's working, so let's call it a night here. You still have school tomorrow, after all. Unless you have any other questions? Just one. Ichigo smirked, are they real? Ishin looked clueless, so Ichigo raised his hands in a very obvious motion, and his dad did another spit take before bursting out laughing. You daydreaming again, Haim? Tatsuki poked her friend on the nose. Wah! Orihime jumped, Mao, so mean, Tatsuki-chan. She pouted, you sensed it too, didn't you? Do you think Ichigo will be late? Course I did. Tatsuki scoffed. Sato came and leaned on the wall next to Orihime, I'm not really worried. Ichigo handled it, like usual. But there was that other signature. Tatsuki finished. Multiple of them, including his dad, I think. Orihime said, before giggling, sneaky Mr. Kurosaki. He pulled a fast one on us. Ugh, I can't believe Thor was right. Tatsuki rolled her eyes, really would have been useful last year while Ichigo was failing to teach us anything. Yeah. Ichigo rolled his eyes as he flicked her on the back of her head. Glad to see you still love my training. Gah! Jerk! Tatsuki glared at him, you and your stupid sonido. I couldn't even tell you moved from your house. Pay better attention then. Ichigo smirked, enjoying their little game. Every morning he would suppress his ryatsu to a degree and sneak attack his friends to train their senses. Today had been a hard-mode morning. So, did a Shinigami finally come? Sato asked his best friend. Never mind that. Orihime cut in, are you okay, Ichigo? They came so close to your house, and they seemed pretty strong. I had to stop Tatsuki-chan from running out of mine to go help. Idiot. Don't tell him that. Tatsuki flushed, looking away. Meh. Ichigo held back a groan, Thor's going to kick my ass. One of them was a burrowing asshole and it surprise chomped on me from below. Had to fight it off and it got me good. Eep. Orihime made a funny sound, new. It's no fair if they're smart. Ichigo snorted, before turning to Sato, and yeah, we finally got one. There was a final hollow with complete camouflage, and it managed to injure her in a pretty bad way for a Shinigami, so she's going to need to recover. He rubbed the back of his neck, and I'd put money on her showing up as a transfer student at some point today in what Dad said was a fake body. Tatsuki brightened up, oh, so Thor was right. Maybe we can learn some actual stuff now. She snarked at her second best but oldest friend. Ichigo smirked back at her, oh, you'll be too busy with Hansho duty to worry about learning anything. What? Tatsuki glared, what the hell does that mean? It means she makes Haim here look inadequate. Ichigo patted the other orange-haired person in the class on the head. All three of them blushed, looking at him a bit agog before the bell rang and they had to get to their seats. Well, this is unusual. Miss Oki said right after the first break of the day, looks like we got a transfer student, class. Make sure you welcome her warmly. Here we go. Ichigo hid a smirk behind his hands as the door opened. Everyone in the class except for Ichigo choked as Ranjiko stepped in, arms behind her back lackadaisically as if she was completely unaware of the absolute battle the top button on her uniform was fighting. The other two had already lost the fight, leaving her cleavage exposed. Her skirt looked to be riding a little high too, or maybe it was a bit shorter than it should have been. She had legs for days too. Hey everyone. She gave them a wink with a happy grin, I'm Matsumoto Ranjiku. Please take care of me. Please marry me. Several voices, Chizuru's and Kigo's the loudest, squealed out. No. Ranjika's happy smile didn't drop in the slightest as she turned them down. Damn, she looks fucking great. Ichigo groaned in his head. What the fuck? Tatsuki gaped at the redhead. Orihime stared, then looked down at her own breasts, then back at Ranjiku's. Inside her head was just a spinning loading wheel. Even Miss Oki had a brain fart, thinking to herself that that was just not fair. She quickly shook her head and welcomed her in. Welcome, Matsumoto-chan. Care to tell us some things about yourself? Ranjiku brought a finger up to her lip and tapped it while looking clueless, and she even managed to make that look somewhat sensual. Well, I suppose I love dried persimmons. She held back a snort as she noticed several other students taking notes. Wonderful. Miss Oki stated, go take your seat next to Kurosaki-san, please, so we can get started. Kurosaki-san, can you wave? Oh, it's fine. I already know him. Ranjiku dropped a bomb, making Chizuru let out a frightened/frustrated scream. She strolled over. How's it going, Barry-kun? Oh. She wants to die. Roughly half the class had the thought run through their minds. Ichigo's eye twitch, sup, titty queen? Most of the girls gasped in scandalized shock. Oh, you noticed. I'm quite proud of them, you know. Ranjiku turned it around as she sat, making the other girls goggle at her now. Think you could share your books? I don't have any of my own, unfortunately. Yeah. Get over here. Ichigo waved her over as the classes started. And then Ranjiku remembered just how boring this would be, and spent the entire period moping. She really should have spent time thinking about a different cover instead of going with Urahara's easy suggestion. This isn't quite what I had in mind when I said we should talk alone. Ranjiku stated, staring at Sato, Tatsuki, and Oraheim. They had all come to the school roof to talk. Also, was that some sort of tradition around here? She asked, referring to the smoking craters she'd left in Kigo and Chizuru's faces when they came flying at her with very grabby hands. Nah, those two are just retarded around pretty girls. Ichigo chuckled. Kigo had immediately gotten up and tried to accost him, asking where he had been hiding the babe. Ichigo had predictably clotheslined him like usual and then tossed him on top of Chizuru. In a compromising position for good measure. Tatsuki had pictures. Tatsuki grinned, good to see another girl not put up with their shit. They're dumbass. She crossed her arms, so you're a Shinigami, huh? Ranjiku blinked in shock, before whirling to Ichigo, wait, there are more of you? Nah. Ichigo shook his head, I'm a special case. They're my best friends and ended up gaining spiritual awareness of their own. Probably my fault, there. I had no idea how to rein in my Ryatsu when I was younger. Eventually, they saw me deal with a hollow during an attack while we were hanging out, and I started trying to teach them so they could defend themselves. They also don't know as much about the spiritual world as I do. Oraheim, Tatsuki, and Sato blinked in confusion at that, before realizing he must have talked with his dad. Ranjiku groaned, this is why lieutenants and captains need those seals, I guess. What a mess. She smiled, well, nice to meet you all. You as well, Ranjiku-chan. Oraheim had bounced back from her sudden bout of breast envy pretty quickly. I'm Inoue Oraheim. Arisawa Tatsuki. The black-haired girl of the group shot her a peace sign. Yasutora Sato. Sato said, shortly, Ichigo calls me Chad though. Strong name, Tiger. Ranjiku smiled at him as well. You'll need to explain that, later. The seals, I mean. Ichigo said, so, how long are you going to be stuck in that jigai? Ranjiku deflated, slouching, optimistically, month and a half? She rubbed the back of her neck again, before flipping her hair out of the way, the hollow hit my Hakusui. She explained, in Shinigami, the Hakusui's one of two vital points, the other being the Seketsu. The Hakusui is the source of a Shinigami's Ryatsu, while the Seketsu can be considered a power booster. If both are stabbed, the Shinigami will permanently lose their powers, with no known way of getting them back. She said, and Oraheim paled at the thought of stabbing. Yikes. You got stabbed? It happened just last night. How are you already up? Tatsuki asked in shock. Healing Kido is quite useful. Ranjiku smirked, I was good as new physically within moments, once an associate was able to help me. She replied, thinking that Urahara had been the one to help her, only problem is. Kaido can't do anything for an injury to either of those 2 points. Orihime went to chime in that she could try healing her too, but the conversation moved on before she could. She'd have to try to remember to do that later. Sato spoke up. Ichigo told us about the fight. Are camouflaging hollows common? Not in the slightest. In that respect, I was really unlucky. Ones with prehensile tongues that can shoot 20 meters and pierce concrete even less so. She groaned. Oh, yuck. Its tongue? Orihime wrinkled her nose in disgust. Yeah. I'm no happier than you. Ranjika shuddered, thinking about how close she had been. On the other hand, I was really lucky. It wasn't a direct hit. More of a nick. So, I'll be able to heal from it. It's just going to take a long, boring while. She sighed, before smiling at Ichigo. Think I can rely on your help, big boy? She winked at him, getting the lightest of flushes. Yeah. Not like I haven't been doing it for years. Still can't console anything though. He grumbled, making her frown. But then her soul phone rang, making them jump. She took it out of her pocket and flipped it open. Hollow incoming. 2 minutes. Yumisawa Children's Park. Wow, that's nifty. They all leaned in to get a better look. You should get one of these, Ichi. Ichigo cracked his neck. Well, be right back. Ichigo said, before thunder rippled and he was gone in his sonito. Ranjika frowned. He's better than me at that. Why does it sound different though? What does yours sound like? Sato asked her curiously. Like a rapid swish. Ranjiku replied. Oh, cool. That's what mine sounds like. I'm the only one of us 3 who has managed one. Tatsuki said, happily. Oh, that's impressive, Tatsuki-chan. Congratulations. Most Shinigami don't manage to learn Shuunpa until they've at least become seated officers. Ranjiku applauded her, making the martial artist smirk gleefully. We should eat lunch before we run out of time. Orihime said, pulling out her bag. I've got a banana, pickle, and bean paste sandwich. She smiled happily. Tatsuki and Sato turned a little green, and then gawked as Ranjiko leaned forward curiously. Can I try? Sure. Orihime ripped off a piece for her, and to the other two's shock, Ranjiku didn't vomit. I'd say it's either missing something or has too much of something. Ranjiku told the much younger girl, who was beaming. Tatsuki and Sato started to sweat. Oh God, there are 2 of them. They whispered to one another, covered in flop sweats. Chapter 4. Wait, you're introducing me to your family already? Oh Barikuin, you sly dog. Ranjiko couldn't help but tease her substitute. She tilted her head. What story are we going with then? Am I your girlfriend? She asked slyly. You know my entire family is spiritually aware too, right? Ichigo asked dryly, making her miss a step. Of course, I wouldn't exactly complain if you wanted to hide like that. He smirked back at her, getting a laugh. But yeah, we're just coming clean with them. You sure that's a good idea? She asked. It's dangerous without powers of their own. Oh, you don't have to worry about that. In fact, his smirk widened. I have a bit of a surprise for you at home. Sounds interesting. What's my present then, Barry-chan? Oh, you'll see. Ichigo couldn't wait to see the look on her face when she saw his dad. Captain Shiba? Ranjika shrieked, her eyes almost popping out of her skull. Yo, Ranjiku-chan. Ishin grinned, sorry for leaving you all my paperwork. Waba WH-? Her brain had actually hard-locked and was refusing to process anything. Ishin laughed, ha. It isn't very often I make you totally speechless. You dash. Ranjiku growled, before charging at him. What the fuck, Captain? We thought you were dead. She shook him by his doctor's coat like she wanted to turn him into a bobblehead. I'm so iwai. Ishin moaned as his head bobbled back and forth. Hey, wait a second. He stiffened his neck and stared at her. Since when do you have red hair? I was dyeing it, asshole. She snarled at him, and would have gone on except Ichigo cut her off. Wait a second, you were hiding that hair? He asked incredulously. That's illegal. Ranjiko blushed. It was a new thing I was trying from the human world. She looked away shiftily. It didn't work anyway. It was supposed to be blonde, but it turned orangish instead. I did end up liking it, so I kept it for a while. Nah, your hair looks fantastic like that. Ichigo countered, and Isshin grinned. Oh, has this day truly come? My son? Flirting with a girl? He wailed happily. And that brought Ranjiku's attention back to him. Wait a second. Stop distracting me. Start groveling. She went back to shaking him. Ichigo rolled his eyes. Good thing for Keto sound barriers. Ichigo mumbled as he walked into the kitchen to let Ranjiko continue interrogating his father. Hey girls. Ichi. Karen looked dumbfounded. Wait, Dad was actually serious about all that? That wasn't just a joke? Nope. Ichigo snickered. If I hadn't been expecting it, I would have just about died when I saw him in his Shinigami form last night. He showed her a V and then started to arc his lightning between his fingers, see? Karen stared at him, totally dumbfounded. And we're going to learn that? Yuzu looked pretty excited. Not like mine. Mine is unique to me. But there's definitely stuff you can learn. He brushed her hair a bit. I'm sure you'd be the cutest little healer. She beamed at him. Yeah, but what about the monsters? Karen waved her hands. I feel like those should be important. That's why we're going to start your training. I've been able to handle hundreds of hollows by myself with no formal training. At the very least, you two need to be able to protect yourselves. He lit up with blood. See these? Wow. So pretty. Yuzu gasped as she stared at him. Even Karen looked a little interested. He bit back a chuckle. Yeah, but it's functional too. You could stab me with a knife, and it would probably break with this technique active. Karen's eyes narrowed. That better not be a tested statement. She glared at her brother. They stared at one another, with Yuzu looking increasingly worried. It wasn't a knife? He broke, with more of a question than an answer. Ichi! They both yelled, sounding scandalized. Thankfully, he was saved by Ranjiko stomping in. Karen's eyes bugged out. Oh my god. She whirled to Ichigo. What, was Oraheim not big enough? She snarked at her brother, who bit back a snigger. Ranjiko didn't notice. You little jerk. Why didn't you tell me? Ichigo smirked, because that was funnier. She slugged him. Ow. Violent woman. Humph. She huffed. Now that I know you're Captain Shiba's son, I know you need a firmer hand. Oh please, Ichigo rolled his eyes. You only ever yelled at him so you could go drink. He chuckled. Plus, he's not a lazy ass anymore. Bull. Ranjiko didn't believe that for a second. In fact, I think we'd all like him better if he was a lazy ass. Karen grumped, sipping at her water. Oh, these are my sisters. Ichigo introduced his family. This is Karen, and this is Yuzu. Nice to meet you both. I'm Matsumoto Ranjiku. Ranjiko smiled at them cheerfully. The girls couldn't respond, because Isshin leapt in for one of his surprise attacks. Ichigo ducked under the spinning kick and pushed him into the wall. What the hell are you doing? You could have hit Ranjiku, you idiot. Can you not stop for one day? Karen groaned. Stupid goat chin. Oh, my children are so mean. Isshin got up and sprinted to Masaki's poster. Oh mother, where did I go wrong? What the fuck? Ranjiko couldn't quite help the swear that escaped her. Told you. Ichigo deadpanned. Isshin immediately bounced back. Well, now that the meet and greet is over. He got serious, making Karen and Yuzu stiffen with shock. I think it's time we all head for Urahara's. Yeah, I already gave Chad, Tats, and Haim the address. They're meeting us there. Ichigo said, having checked his phone and seen that they were already on the way. Good. Ishin smiled at his daughters. Well girls, time for you to get the first taste of the world mommy and daddy were from. Do you want to walk or go there the fun way? Seuss. Karen said immediately. Ishin recoiled, holding the metaphorical arrow in his heart. It was surprisingly Yusu who said, fun. Fun it is. Ishin grinned, before scooping the both of them up into his arms. Gah! Dad, what are you? Karen started to ask, but Ishin interrupted her. Hold on tight to daddy, girls. He told them, before he flickered and vanished. Ranjiko's eye twitched, so did he just forget that I currently can't Shuinpa, or is he just that dumb? Jury's out on that. Ichigo mumbled. Huh? What does that mean? Ranjiko blinked cluelessly, unfamiliar with the modern colloquialism. Never mind. He then surprised her by picking her up in a bridal carry. Oh my, moving a bit fast, are we? Ranjiko fluttered her eyelids at him. Just don't act like a pervert like your old man used to, or else. Him? A pervert? Now I've heard everything. With the buzz of sonido, the two were gone from the house. Huh, that feels kind of strange when you're not in control. Ranjiko mumbled. Ishin was gone, having entered the Urahara Shoten. Karen and Yuzu looked a little woozy as well, though they weren't quite stumbling about. Hey, you okay? He kneeled in front of his sisters. That felt weird. Karen mumbled. My tummy does too. Yuzu moaned, looking just the slightest shade of green. He chuckled as he started head-patting them. Sorry, I have no point of reference. That was one of the first things I learned how to do. Always felt normal. You've never been taken in one. That was a first for me too, and I feel almost a little sick. Ranjiko said, and I'm used to that technique. Or my version of it, at least. You're far faster than I am. She leaned down too, getting both the younger girls to blush in fear, her boobs popping out. Deep breaths, and it should pass. Karen blurted, they're going to fall out. Aren't you embarrassed? She stood straight. Of my girls? Why would I be? She hefted them a little, getting blushes from all three of them, though Ichigo's was the smallest. I'm not embarrassed of my body in the slightest, and I'm a warrior. Wardrobe malfunctions happen, and we have more important things to worry about. Plus. She giggled, I tried buttoning up at the school's insistence, and, well. Ranjiko rolled her eyes as yet another teacher asked her to cover up. These humans were such prudes. Feiyun. She whined, before starting to grunt and moan as she tried to close the button up. Finally, after a struggle, she did so, happy. The shirt was stretched to the point you could still see cleavage from between the buttons. Extremely. Ichigo thought to himself. It was almost even better seeing that button fight for its life. Nu. Chizuru wailed, how could you, sensei? They're too holy to hide. They deserve to be free. Kigo joined in on the wailing, getting Ranjiko's attention and making her unconsciously turn slightly to him. Ichigo had his elbow on his desk and his face in his hand, which hid his smirk. 3, 2, 1. The button she had done up tore from the strands, before launching forward like a gunshot. Kigo didn't even have time to react before it hit him in the forehead, knocking him backwards like Chad had punched him in the face and throwing him into Chizuru, again putting both of them on the floor on top of one another. Ichigo was wheezing as he tried to contain his laughter, and for the first time, Ranjika had a bit of a blush. Well. She mumbled, that's why I don't bother. Their sensei could only stare in disbelief. Karen and even Yuzu were both nearly falling over with laughter, and both felt much better about the situation. What's so funny? Tatsuki, Oraheim, and Chad walked up to them, and the martial artist asked once they got close enough, grinning at the younger girls. Ranjiko was telling them about her murdering Kigo today. Ichigo informed them. Put. Oraheim started to giggle as well, and Tatsuki's grin widened. It had been pretty dang funny. Well now, seems we have a party here. Urahara came out of the store with Ishin. Well, Kurosaki-san, you certainly can't seem to do anything normal, can you? He asked flippantly, flipping open a paper fan in front of him. Normal is boring. Ichigo replied bluntly. I can't believe you had powers all along, Kurosaki-san. Oraheim bounced up to him excitedly. Ichigo hasn't told us much. Are you strong? She asked him, getting a laugh from the older man. Tatsuki groaned, man, you should have said something. Ichigo sucks as a teacher. She said bluntly. A tick mark popped up on Ichigo's head. Excuse me for not ever having been taught a fucking thing. I still taught you stuff, didn't I? And I'm rather intrigued to see how you went about learning a technique you had no business being able to learn. Urahara had heard some details from Isshin, among them being blut. So why don't we all come in and have some tea? He clapped the fan shut, waving it at the door. They all started walking in, before a boy with red hair turned from what he had been doing, pulling another girl's pigtails, and stared at them rudely. Who the hell are you guys? And then Ichigo's hand clapped onto his head, a serene smile on his face as he lifted him off the ground with one hand. What the hell? Let go. The boy kicked out at him. I'm sorry. Ichigo said, but I didn't see you bullying that cute, little girl, did I? His smile almost made the boy piss himself, while said little girl blushed brightly. Karen rolled her eyes, put the older brother away, Ichi-nii. Ichigo harumphed, but put the boy down. Karen walked up to him, and then immediately got in his face, grabbing his shirt and practically head-butting him. Try that crap with me, and you're going to eat it. What the? Let go of me, bitch. Jinta glared right back. Karen-chan. Yuzu yelled, scandalized. Ranjiko started to laugh, feisty. Like brother, like sister, I guess. It's okay. The girl poked her fingers together. Jinta-san is just being a jerk. Karen let the redhead go and walked up to the other girl, throwing an arm around her shoulder. Let's be friends, she said shortly, causing the girl to dip her head. What's your name? Yururu. She wiggled a little bit, still extremely shy. Yuzu popped up. Nice name, Yururu-chan, she said cheerfully, getting a small, little smile from her. Urahara laughed. Maybe I should have brought you all here sooner. Jinta-san has been needing that head of his popped for a while. Asshole. Jinta stalked off, before running into the brick wall that was Tessai, who picked him up not unlike how Ichigo had. Tessai, he yelped, trembling a little. How many times do we have to tell you to leave Yururu-chan alone, Jinta? He let out a sigh, before walking away with the redhead. Well, now that the entertainment is over. Urahara was smiling from behind his fan again. Why don't we get to business? So, what does everyone know? Urahara asked. Jinta was off cooling down, and so he was the only one missing. Yururu had tried to leave as well, but Yuzu and Karen had latched onto her. Isshin answered, Ichigo knows everything, and told me something I'll want to talk about with you later. I'm not sure what he filled in for his friends. Not much. Sato admitted, we didn't have a whole lot of time at school, so we only knew what we already knew. Right, which was the basics of the afterlife, Shinigami, hollows, etc. Tatsuki said, really just what his Zanpakuto and him had been able to guess at. Which means my sisters probably know the least. Ichigo concluded. I'm still struggling to believe any of this is real. Karen said bluntly, we've been able to see ghosts for years, but hollows and Shinigami. It's a bit much. Yuzu said, quietly. Isshin put his hands on both of their shoulders in support. Ichigo convinced me to let you in too. We don't want you to be in danger without even knowing it. That's why we're going to be teaching you. He explained gently, getting slow nods from the girls. He put on his dad face. Besides, he said goofily, you can learn magic. Like this. He pointed a finger at Ichigo. Bakuto number 61. Rikuja Koro. His fingertips started to glow. Gak! Ichigo gasped as 6 rods of light slammed into him. He found he couldn't move a muscle other than his mouth. I can't move. What the hell, asshole? Captain Shiba. Ranjiko gasped, her eyes bulging at seeing such a high-level Bakuto being used for a prank/demonstration. Moron! Karen elbowed him in the side. Stop being mean to Ichi and I. She glared at him, getting crocodile tears from him. Ishin pouted, fine. Daddy will let Ichigo go. Like hell you will. Ichigo growled, starting to strain. Ishin, Ranjaku, and Urahara twitched in alarm. Kurosaki-san, stop. That's Dange-Urahara started to say, before Ichigo's grunting increased in volume. And then his lightning started to crackle along his form, before spreading to the 6 rods of light. The Ryatsu coming from him climbed to a degree that Yuzu and Yururu flinched. And then the light started to crack, before shattering apart as the lightning surrounding him screamed. He flexed slightly as he broke it, opening and then clenching his fists once, before dropping his arms with a bit of tiredness. The 3 experienced Shinigami stared in shock. That was a Rikujikoro. Ranjiku couldn't contain her shock. Granted, it was with no incantation, but it was still a Bakuto in the 60s. He broke it with brute force. I take it that was impressive? Sato asked, speaking for the first time in a while. Try unheard of. Urahara looked at Ichigo calculatingly, and not even because he is a human. If a regular human tried that, even one with the ability to see spirits, their soul unraveling is a very distinct possibility. And that was with a basic, level 1 spell. For a spell in the 60s, it simply should not have been possible to break it like that. Only someone with equal experience with Kido could have done it, via unraveling the spell while exerting their own power. Damn it, Ichigo! Tatsuki snarled, why the hell would you dash? How was I suppository to know? Ichigo blared, besides, I've been doing this on my own for so long. Just defaulted to it. Well, it was certainly informative. Tessai said dryly, I do wonder if you have any talent for it yourself, or if that brute force of yours will keep you from learning, like so many others. Won't more power make it easier to cast spells? You can cast more of them and more powerful ones, right? Oraheim asked, looking confused. Was this not like an RPG? Ha ha ha. Tessai started to rumble in laughter. I'm afraid that's quite incorrect. Ranjiku smiled and patted the other busty girl on the shoulder. It is true. Granted, it might lead to more powerful spells when mastered, but think of Kido like a dinner you've been preparing with many different steps and ingredients. If you add too much salt, it will become inedible. And if you overpower Kido without knowing what you are doing, it will just explode in your face. Yeah, doesn't sound like I'll be learning anytime soon. Ichigo rubbed the back of his head with a small look of irritation. He was well aware that control was not his forte. Shame. Bakuto could have been useful. I see. Oraheim looked disappointed. How was Ichigo going to slay a dragon hollow with blasts of fire and lightning if he was bad at Kido? Shame. Tessai looked disappointed. Hopefully at least one of you has talent with it. A student after so many years sounds wonderful. That brings me to my next question. Urahara looked at Ichigo's 3 friends. Have any of you fought hollows? He got a trio of nods. Fascinating. Kurosaki-san, do they purify them if they kill them, or do they fight, and you finish them off? They do. Ichigo replied, smirking slightly. They all worked hard. That's not what I'm getting at, and your response is fascinating. Urahara looked like Christmas had come early. I'm told that your father informed you of the Quincy, and you informed him that you had taught your friends Blood, which is a Quincy ability. By all rights, they shouldn't be able to learn that ability at all. And even if it had been possible, Quincy don't purify hollows. They annihilate them entirely, destroying every soul it consumed over its lifetime. His 3 friends, his sisters, and Ranjiko gasped in shock. So with that ability, they shouldn't be purifying any hollows they kill. Ichigo chuckled, let me correct you, hot and clogs. Ishin twitched, looking like he wanted to laugh, and Ranjiku didn't bother holding her giggles in. I didn't teach them Blood. I had no idea what blood even was. I taught them whatever the hell it is that I use, and I learned everything either instinctively or from my Zanpakuto. Left unsaid was that some of his abilities were distinctly hollow in nature, and those certainly didn't get taught. Urahara's eyes gleamed with interest, meaning everything you taught them was from the perspective of a Shinigami. You converted a Quincy ability and made it your own. His fingers twitched in a slightly creepy manner by his side, unseen by the others. Fascinating. He flipped his fan open. I would be quite interested in studying how you manage that. I'm a bit of a scientist, after all. Don't experiment on my son. Isshin deadpanned, getting said son to snort. Ma, don't be like that. Urahara most certainly did not whine. It won't be anything invasive. This is a unique opportunity to advance our knowledge, you know. Just think. Maybe we could teach Quincy abilities without that devastating drawback. Ichigo mused this for a moment. You've got a point. He drawled, drawing their attention to him, and that could mean the girls could learn mom's arts without needing to feel guilty. He scratched his neck. What the hell? You scratch our backs, we'll scratch yours. Urahara looked like every birthday for the next 100 years had come early. Isshin snorted this time. If Ichigo wants to allow it, it's up to him. But for now, I'd say that's about it for the important details. Well then. Urahara stood. I think it's time we get a move on for your evaluations. He smirked impishly, waving his paper fan a little before snapping it closed. Before that, Ichigo stopped them. Did Dad talk to you about getting me an Asachi? He did indeed. Urahara put up his dopey grin. Though I don't exactly have any of those lying around, I will be able to acquire one. I've contacted a friend, and they will be able to sneak into Soul Society and the Academy to grab one. It'll merely take some time. He tilted his head to the side, though admittedly, I find it rather confounding that you need one when you already have a Zanpakuto spirit. I'm no happier about it than you are. Ichigo deadpanned. Orihime tapped her chin cutely. Urahara-san, should the three of us get them as well? Ichigo's eyes widened. Orihime had asked that question? He looked at her quizzically. What are you up to, Hime? I never thought you would ask for a sword. Well, we can't send ghosts on without them, right? She asked cutely. Oh yeah. Karen gasped excitedly, get me one too. The ghosts are so annoying. Isshin let out a laugh at his daughter's excitement. Mou, they're not that bad, Karen-chan. Yuzu pouted. She didn't see what was so bad. Granted, she was the last to start seeing them. Tatsuki laughed at their reactions, before looking at Orihime, and here I was, thinking you were having another one of your daydreams. She shot at the other girl playfully, getting a bashful giggle. She cracked her neck. She's got a point. Ghosts are annoying, even if I'd probably stick to hand-to-hand for combat. Sato agreed. I can't imagine myself with a sword, but it would be useful for that, at least. Ah, but who says your Zanpakuto have to be a sword? Urahara asked slyly, getting blinks from all of them. We don't have any example in the room, but there are many Zanpakuto that are not swords. Or even bladed weapons at all. Ranjaku giggled. One of the other lieutenants has a giant spiked ball, the 11th Division's third seat has a trisection spear, hell, one of the oldest captains has a manta ray as her Zanpakuto. At that, even Ichigo and Sato sputtered, performing spit takes and spraying their drinks. Isshin burst into laughter at the reactions. Oh hell, I forgot about Minazuki. It eats you, and then you get healed in its stomach. No thanks. Tatsuki yelped, feeling a full-body shiver run through her. Ichigo grew a shit-eating grin. Oh ho ho, what's this? He stared at his oldest friend slyly. You know I have thalassophobia. You want to go, asshole? She lunged across the table at him, and Sato had to catch her and hold her back. Calm down, Tatsuki-chan. Orihime hugged the other girl tight. Urahara let out a laugh. Looks like you kids have energy to burn. Luckily, I have a nice little training ground to do just that. Oh wow. Orihime gasped. I had no idea such a huge space was underneath the store. Tatsuki was beside her, ogling away, as were Yuzu and Karen. Even Ranjiko looked a little dumbfounded at the sheer scale of the place. It's like a secret base. Yuzu was sparkling, it even has a sky. This is so cool. Tessai made a noise, drawing their attention. Ichigo blanched as he saw the huge man start crying. What a sublime reaction. I'm so touched. He had one of Oraheim's hands in both of his. Thanks. She giggled, rubbing the back of her head. Always making friends, huh, Heim? Tatsuki laughed. Still, this is pretty cool. Sato chuckled. Can't imagine it's to building code, though. That's where you'd be wrong, my young friend. Urahara smugly fanned himself. This space does not truly exist in the realest sense of the word, and even were humans to dig around the shop, they would be unable to find it. All they would find is the regular and expected piping in ground. Ha! Pretty cool, hat and clogs. Karen took up her brother's nickname for the man with gleaming eyes. Hey dad, can we get one of these? Why thank you, Karen-chan. Urahara snapped his fan shut and put it away, and of course, though for a price. Ichigo cracked his neck. Hell yes. I'm eager to see how I stack up against a former captain. Ranjiko smirked. This should be fun. She took a seat on one of the nearby rocks to watch. Isshin grinned. Tessai, you said you were excited to teach some cute little students of your own, so why don't you get started on Kido with Karen and Yuzu? And Yoruru-chan, of course. Ha! Yuzu looked to the side and up at her father. Aren't you going to teach us, Daddy? Of course, I am, he cooed at the little dirty blonde, but we all have our strong suits, and comparing me and Tessai-san in Kido is like comparing you and Ichigo in cooking. An angry tick mark appeared on Ichigo's head. Yes, you can both do it, but you're way better at it. He tickled her, getting a couple giggles. Okay then. Come on Yuzu, Yoruru-chan. Karen grabbed both of their hands, leading them away with Tessai. So? Ichigo and his friends were stretching out. How are we going to do this? Isshin took a breath and left his jigai for only the second time in many years. Already, he felt like he had started recovering faster than all the previous years combined. He gently lowered his body and placed it up against a rock. Well, seeing as none of you have weapons, I'd say fighting with our Zanpakuto would be a waste. Oraheim raised a finger and made to speak, but Isshin didn't see and spoke over her, so I figure we could do one-on-one matches, or even two-on-one. Urahara smiled. My, it's been a while since I've had to use Hakuta. Should be fun. He said airily. Shouldn't you know what we can do first? Oraheim looked adorably confused. They probably think it doesn't matter if they do or not, and will use the spar to find out. Tatsuki told her, seemingly without an issue, though her eyes were narrowed slightly. It makes sense. Sato said without any worry, they both were former Taicho, after all, and were all self-taught. Correct. Urahara said plainly, smiling lightly, that is not to say we think you aren't capable. Far from it. But we have more years of experience than you have years alive. Do not take it as a slight. His smile widened. Of course, if you think you can make us take you seriously, you're free to try. Ichigo snorted and cracked his neck and some of his joints. Have fun with dad, guys. I want a shot at Taicho-san over here. He smirked at Urahara, and I suggest you break out those fancy Kido of yours too. He spread his arms, otherwise you might regret it. With the final word, he took a step forward and clapped. Thunder might as well have rumbled in the basement, for a shockwave that cracked the ground raced at Urahara. The blonde's eyes widened, and he raised his hand to his hat to hold it down right as the shockwave struck him, forcing him back a few steps just out of sheer force. He smiled, completely intrigued. My oh my, you're quite scary, aren't you Kurosaki-san? He took the boy before him much more seriously. I see now why Isshin said he could make you his lieutenant and not have to worry about nepotism. Ichigo grinned, before vanishing in Sonito. Urahara also vanished, taking his young opponent deeper into the basement so as to not interfere with the others during their spar. Hoof. Tatsuki snorted, rude. That's Ichigo for you. Oraheim giggled, before focusing on the boy's father. Are you okay with a 3-on-1, Kurosaki-san? Isshin laughed. I'm surprised Tatsuki-chan hasn't blown a gasket and demanded this be 1-on-1. Tatsuki growled, I would, but even after he trained us to use our powers, I still can't beat Ichigo anymore. And it burned her to admit that. Unless you prove otherwise, I'm assuming you're at least as strong as he is in treating you as a sensei. A good way of looking at it. Isshin drew his Zanpakuto out of his belt and went to go lay it next to his body, only to stop and look at Sato curiously as he called out. I suggest you keep that, Ichigo's dad. The air near Sato's arms warped, before armor started to appear on both of them. His right arm was engulfed with a black, matte substance with a magenta design over it. His right arm was encased in white, with red striping. Isshin gaped at the sight, and at the fact that the powers themselves had a hollow feel to them. Sato's next words once more drew his attention, we're tougher than we look. Still, Isshin hesitated. Oh, and you were incorrect, Kurosaki-san. Oraheim smiled as her hairpins started to glow, not all of us lack weapons. Her hairpins burst into 6 golden lights which spun around her. She held her right hand out and one of them flew into it, forming into a golden sword. The second flew towards her left forearm, before turning into a larger than normal golden heater shield. 2 others went behind her back, forming into some jagged-looking wings. The final 2 spun around her head, looking almost like a halo. All of the golden armaments were fully transparent. Isshin and Ranjiko's eyes were bulging. What in the world? Oraheim smiled brightly. How do you like my Shun Rika? Meet Shuno, Ayam, Bagan, Hinajiku, Tsubaki, and Lily. Hi-yi-yi. 5 excited voices, with one duller 6th voice, called out from her. Isshin rubbed his eyes, seeing. Still not believing. He mumbled, blinking rapidly. Ranjiko couldn't believe it either. What in the world were these 4 teens? Tatsuki laughed as she took a step forward. Well, I don't have any of their fancy stuff. She raised her arms in the air to stretch, before taking a step forward and stomping on the ground as she took a basic stance. The ground beneath her cracked as her veins lit up, but unlike what Isshin had been expecting, her veins lit up red. Isshin's jaw practically unhinged as he recognized the technique, but didn't have a moment to say a word. Mine's a bit more subtle. She vanished in Shuunpa, and Isshin immediately had to block a pretty strong attack that forced him back 6 feet. His arm was smoking from the impact of her punch. He started to laugh as he slipped his sword back on. Where the hell did you kids come from? You're breaking all sorts of supposed rules, you know? He grinned sharply. Well, let us begin. Tatsuki would have faceplanted at the joke if she hadn't known the man for over a decade at this point. Sato merely sweat-dropped while Oraheim giggled. Isshin grinned. If you want to have fun, then let's see how you do. Hato number 4, Byakurai. He shot a pretty large bolt of lightning at Tatsuki, who merely grinned as her red veins vanished and blue ones replaced them. She held her breath for a bare moment right before the attack hit, and a loud, metallic-sounding clang rang through the air as she moved her forearm in the attack's path. Isshin blinked in shock as all the power of his technique instantly vanished, and his eyes widened as he realized some small, ethereal-looking flames were flickering on his son's friend's skin. She grinned madly. Sorry, Kurosaki-san. She called out, Ichigo's been throwing lightning bolts at us for over a year. He didn't get a chance to respond to her. Sato crashed down to his side. The protrusions on his right shoulder had split apart and were flaring with rapier, el directo. He yelled, punching forward with his right fist. A blue blast of pure spiritual power shot forward. It was massive. Bigger than Isshin's entire body. Isshin leapt backwards to dodge. Wait, shit. He grunted as he realized Oraheim had gotten right in the El Directo's path. His foot touched the ground right as he realized Oraheim looked unconcerned. In fact, she had seemingly sheathed her blade inside the shield. It turned from a heater shield into a much larger triangular prism-shaped one. Shurten Koshin, I reject. Sato's El Directo plowed into her, and couldn't force her back even an inch. Instead, the blast seemingly absorbed into the shield as she turned to face Isshin before a golden beam shot straight at him. It was much smaller and thinner than Sato's attack, but it was much faster and even stronger. Isshin couldn't believe it, but they had actually forced him to draw Injutsu. With an Iajutsu technique, he split the beam in half, not flinching as the 2 splits raced past his head. he sheathed his blade again. Oh boy, I'm impressed, kids. What do you call that technique, Tatsuki-chan? I call it Royal Guard. She answered, but you have other things to worry about. Ishin grinned as Sato again landed in front of him, this time. Do I? The large boy started swinging for the fences, displaying impressive boxing technique. Ishin wasn't sweating as he easily parried and traded blows with the younger man. Not bad, Chad. He yelled, using his son's nickname for the Mexican-Japanese young man, you're a little slow though, and definitely need to start utilizing those legs more. He kicked one of said legs, making it buckle and getting a surprised grunt from the teen, before Ishin flicked the air in front of him. Bwah! Chad spat some saliva as what felt like an air cannon hit him in the stomach, driving him back 100 feet. He crashed on the ground and started to roll, before getting his feet behind him and halting his own momentum. He tried to stand, but wobbled a little and hunched over, holding the area in pain. Whoops. Bit too much. Sorry about that, Chad. Thought you could handle that much. Ishin rubbed the back of his head ruefully. You okay there? Sato got his feet under him and nodded, though he was still holding his front with a bit of a grimace. Shit. Tatsuki gaped. She rapidly re-evaluated what she knew of her friend's father. Crouching moron, hidden badass indeed. Shuno, Oraheim said, and her halo broke apart and raced over the Sato, before forming another shield in front of his chest. Soden-kisan, I reject. Sadly, Ishin didn't get to see what that did, because Tatsuki used Chuunpa to get in front of him before unleashing a devastating roundhouse at his head from the air. Ishin raised a block, noting her red veins, but her attack had even more power than the first one. He slid a few feet, before he punched at her again as she was landing. Once more, she clanged as she blocked his punch, which was making him extremely confused. But whatever she was doing, those ethereal flames were getting a bit brighter. She sped forward and unleashed a deadly skillful combo attack, seemingly not caring if she was hit back. In fact, she seemed to relish it as she switched to blue. She missed a few blocks, and he was much stronger than her, so she grimaced from the impacts. But not to the degree he expected. He had rapidly dialed the strength back up after having toned things down post Sato's hit, because clearly she could handle it. But every time she was actually hit, those ethereal flames seemed to diminish a little. Every time she successfully blocked, they got brighter, and the entire impact was absorbed. He had to bite back a grin as he formed a theory on what her unique ability must be. Time to test out if he was right. He kicked her with much higher power than he really needed to, but also slow enough that she could react to it. She raised her leg and blocked it, again absorbing all of the force. The flames around her were extremely visible now, after that one. Explosion! She cried out as she attacked while he was off balance. He vanished in a Shuunpa as her punch screamed through the air where he'd been. He whistled as he saw the devastation. It had hit a boulder 100 feet away and disintegrated it. Shit! She cried out, I thought I had you. Wahahaha! Ishin laughed loudly, sorry Tatsuki-chan, but you're not fast enough to hit an opponent who was expecting it. Thanks for confirming my little theory. It's a very cool ability. He gave her a thumbs up. And then they all stumbled as an earthquake rocked the little training ground. They all turned and gaped at the source, seeing a blindingly bright indoor lightning storm raging in the distance. Geez, how strong is he? Ishin whined, wondering just how much there would even be to teach his son. We don't really know. Oraheim admitted, having regained her halo, and floating near them, he's never gone all out that we know of. Sato also looked fully healed, making Ishin raise an eyebrow. He never wanted to go all out. And we never asked him to. Just what little he showed us was already so destructive. Tatsuki nodded, but he can take all three of us at the same time, without much of a bother. She groused, still irritated that no matter how strong she got, she just never could seem to catch up. Ishin smiled, thanks, you three. Let's continue. He vanished, and this time decided to see how they would fight against opponents who wouldn't play the physical game with them. He appeared in front of Tatsuki, telegraphing a punch. She got into her block stance, but Ishin merely phased through her, making her stumble, and throwing off her rhythm. He back-kicked her in the back, knocking her down before vanishing again. He appeared right in Sato's face with a very silly look on his own, watching as Sato threw a surprised haymaker. He blocked it and grabbed the boy's arm, pivoting and executing a judo throw, directly into a surprised Oraheim. She dropped the shield and sword, catching Sato and trying to get him back on his feet. But Ishin appeared in front of them, grinning and kicking Sato square in the belly. Oraheim and him both grunted as they were forced back, and only were prevented from both crashing into the ground due to Oraheim's wings. "Oof, you're so heavy, Sato-kun." She shot at him playfully as she put him down. Her front was revealed to be covered in their blood vein facsimile. Tatsuki had used Shuinpa to get in close to Ishin, her fists blazing with what Masaki would have called blood artery, though Ishin was well aware that it probably wasn't what they called it. She tried to punch him, but he merely redirected her blow, throwing her to the ground, which cratered under her force. Not a small crater either. A cone at least 15 meters long had shattered in front of where she was currently buried shoulder-deep in the earth. He sensed danger and threw himself to the side, watching as what looked like a golden spear had flown at him. It pierced into the dirt and sprang back out 5 meters away, seemingly like it had drilled through all the earth beneath it without losing a lick of power. His sharp eyes caught the little something inside the spear as it vanished and flew back to Oraheim, where it turned into a sword once more. He noted she hadn't once really attacked him the way someone with her armaments probably should have. She was consistently being a ranged fighter and barely at that, settling into a more support role. Tatsuki had managed to pull her arm out of the earth, and she called out to Sato, "Come on, Chad. Let's get him." She vanished and appeared behind him, and Sato came from the front, this time clad in blood vein. Oraheim raised her right arm, her sword once again changing into a spear. She was ready to attack the minute she saw an opening. But Ishin had seen enough, and wasn't about to give her one. He pointed his index and middle fingers at both Tatsuki and Sato, Bakuto number 9. Horin. Orange, spiraling tendrils of energy erupted towards his targets and encircled them. Wah! What the fuck? Tatsuki cried out as she tried to block them, but her arms were bound tight to her sides and her legs snapped together. Sato suffered the same, and they both would have fallen over if Ishin hadn't jumped back to avoid Oraheim's spear. He pulled both glowing orange ropes in a motion that had him crossing his arms, and they both let out surprised yells as they were sent hurtling towards one another. Oof! They both grunted as they crashed into one another and the twin ropes started slithering over one another, binding the both of them tightly and making them both crash to the ground. Tatsuki-chan! Sato-kun! Oraheim yelled in shock. She called Tsubaki back to her hand, but before he could get there, Ishin had already appeared in front of her and grabbed her wrist. She squeaked as he sent her hurtling towards the other two teens. "All right kids, that's enough." Ishin called out, "You all did great." He praised them. Tatsuki groaned as she got up, cracking her neck. "Geez. What the hell do you mean? You're so strong. We didn't even get one good hit in." Ranjiku, who had been legitimately dumbfounded while watching and seeing all of the unique things they knew how to do, walked up to them with a smile. "Kids, Captain Shiba was a captain. If any of you had been able to touch him, I'd eat my scarf. I probably couldn't beat him, and I have decades of experience." She patted Oraheim on the shoulder. "You all did great. Any of the divisions would be happy to have you as seated officers, minimum. And that's only after, what, a year or two of training?" "1. Sato confirmed. 1 year. She deadpanned. The Spiritual Arts Academy's curriculum spans 6, and it is a rare event indeed to graduate faster than that. What's more, each division only has 20 positions for seated officers, and of those 20, only the bottom 10 can be held by more than one person. In sheer prowess, I have little doubt that Tatsuki-chan could be top 10 easily, though I didn't see overly much from Haim-chan and Sato-kun to judge them accurately." Ishin clapped her on the shoulder. "Top 10 easily. Maybe even top 5. The big thing holding you all back is experience. You clearly show signs of few sparring partners and fighting only certain kinds of opponents. Tatsuki, you're definitely the most well-rounded. Good offense. Good defense. Good speed. I think when Yoruichi gets back, you'll have a very eager sensei. Tatsuki finally grinned, eager to meet this Yoruichi. You two on the other hand. Ishin turned to Sato. Chad, you're a very straightforward fighter, and clearly too used to getting ahead via your strength, and that just doesn't cut it against someone stronger or more experienced. You definitely could use more speed, and some formal training. Sato nodded at his evaluation, feeling some frustration as he felt he had done fairly poorly. Oraheim, he turned to the buxom girl, for someone with a sword and shield, you sure didn't fight like it. She blushed. He wasn't wrong, your attack evidently has some potent power, and your ability to reflect attacks is very powerful. Can it only reflect energy attacks? No, Kurosaki-san. Oraheim shook her head, any damage that my shield takes is absorbed, and can be returned. Doesn't matter what it is. She tilted her head and held a finger to her lips, at least I don't think it does. That's even better then. Still, you very clearly were underutilizing your sword and shield, and you were fairly stationary despite the wings in flight. It was a very contradictory set of powers and utilization, which you'll need to fix. As you saw, there's a point where it just won't work, and I can assure you, hollows get much stronger than the riffraff you've been likely dealing with. Some Kido would be great as well. Okay. She nodded, smiling. She still had some hang-ups about violence, but they were mostly in the past. As long as she could protect the one she loved, as long as she never had to suffer from losing someone like she lost Sora and I ever again, she would swallow that distaste. My, looks like we're all done. Urahara said airily as he clacked his way to them. He looked disheveled but entirely uninjured. That was very deceptive. He had at least one heavy bruise under his clothes, as well as some small Lichtenberg marks from an electrical burn. Ichigo had been far stronger than he had anticipated, and he'd even been forced to unleash Beneheim. Ichigo meanwhile was in nothing more than his shoes and jeans, as Urahara had sliced his shirt to ribbons. Some drying blood covered his torso, but he was uninjured due to his high-speed regeneration. Ranjika shamelessly ate the eye candy, and Ichigo smirked when he noticed it. Are you okay, Kurosaki-kun? Oraheim asked him, ready to use her Shun Rika if needed. Yeah, I'm fine. He glared at Urahara, my shirt died though. Tatsuki snickered, another one bites the dust. My, Kurosaki-san. If you liked that one so much, perhaps you should have left it at home. Urahara fanned himself, grinning. Ishin laughed, looking a little disheveled there, son. Was the captain a bit more than you were expecting? No. Ichigo said bluntly, the constant Kawarimi no jutsu with fake copies of himself was annoying though. Ishin sputtered, what? He looked like he was drooling from it, what the hell Kasuke? You needed to use your portable jigai? Urahara's grin widened, I'll tell you, my friend, that's one scary son you have. Well, I'll be. Ishin mumbled, wiping his mouth, anyway, unless any of you have anything else that you want to show us, I think we should be done here. Oh, I do. Oraheim raised her hand like she was in class, getting grins from several of them from how cute she was. Ranjiku-chan, she turned to the only woman she'd ever met with bigger boobs than her, can you please get out of your, what was it called? Jigai? Ranjiku, Ishin, and Urahara blinked. Ranjiku scratched her chin, I'm healing in this thing. Why? Ichigo groaned, smacking himself in the face, why the hell didn't I think of that? He mumbled through his hand, do it, Ranjiku-chan. Ranjiku hesitated, so Ishin shrugged, might as well see what she wants to show us. A few minutes out of it won't hurt now that you've stabilized. Okay. She grunted and struggled to phase out of the jigai. After a moment, she managed it, appearing in that white robe while Ichigo caught her body and leaned it on one of the boulders. What's this about, Hanchan? Oraheim smiled, Soten Kisun, I reject. Her hairpins glowed, and then two of her Shun Rika shot out and engulfed Ranjiku. A few minutes later, for one of the first and only times in his life, Urahara felt his jaw unhinge behind his fan in legitimate dumbfounded shock. Ranjiku, back in her shihakusho and wearing Heniko on her proper place behind her back, was hugging the stuffing out of Oraheim. Ishin was doing nothing to hide his own, that dash he stammered as he pointed at the two women, that. What? That's our Heim. Tatsuki laughed out loud, secretly the biggest badass of all three of us. Hee. Oraheim rubbed the back of her head bashfully. Urahara opened his mouth, but clicked it shut as they all heard a cry of, Daddy! Yuzu came running excitedly over to them, with Karen following more sedately behind her. Ichi. We did it! She said to them excitedly, Look! She turned around and took a deep breath, bright lights. Threads bound. The autumn is gathered. Bakuto number 4, Hainawa. She held her hands together, and a weakly crackling golden rope formed between her hands and wrists, which she threw at a boulder, wrapping it up tightly. Little tiny forks of electricity crackled along it, before Yuzu let the technique go. Nice job, Yuzu! Ichigo scooped her up in a hug, spinning her around while she giggled in delight. All of them smiled at the love he clearly had for his sister. He turned and grinned at Karen. How about you, Karen? Karen smirked, and took a deep breath as Ichigo put Yuzu down. She pointed her index and middle fingers at the same boulder, Heido number 4, Byakurai. Ishin and especially Ichigo's eyes lit up gleefully as they saw her fingers crackle with electricity for 3 seconds before it discharged, forming a very small and thin beam that struck the boulder and pierced 3 inches into it. Ack! She gasped as Ichigo also picked her up in a congratulatory hug. Ichi. Put me down. No one commented on her hugging him harder than he was hugging her, though Tatsuki and Ranjiku both had, such a tsundere, run through their minds. Great job too, Karen. He kissed the top of her head after putting her down, making her flush in happy embarrassment. And then Ishin swept the both of them up as well. Ack! Damn it, Go-chin! Put us down! The young girl roared. Daddy, I'm going to get dizzy. Yuzu whined until they were both put down. She looked up and gave him some doe eyes. Daddy, do you think Yororo-chan could have a sleepover with us? Said girl blushed sharply, wiggling from side to side in excited anxiety. You know, that's a wonderful idea. Ishin said, smiling brightly at his daughter, though only partially because he was elated at his 2 daughters not only making a friend, but one who was spiritually aware. He knew full well how strong Yororo was when threats were detected. Tatsuki looked at her watch. Yeah, I think we're done for the day too. It's date night. She grinned as she grabbed Sato and Oraheim's hands. Oraheim blushed, though Sato only smiled a little. Ranjiko blinked. Wait, the 3 of you are dash. Correct. Sato rumbled, squeezing Tatsuki's hand. Ha! She looked to Ichigo, expecting to find some jealousy, but was surprised to see he was merely mumbling something with Urahara and his father without a care in the world. He clearly wasn't just avoiding the situation either, like she'd seen in some cases back in the Seriidii. Ishin turned around. Tatsuki-chan, Oraheim-chan, Chad, where are you 3 going? Tatsuki looked over at him. My house, why? Oh good. Do you think you can drop Karen, Yuzu, and Yororo off at the clinic on your way back? He waved his finger in a circle, indicating the adults, and Ichigo, still have some things we need to discuss, and Kasuke needs to check over Ranjiko to make sure she's fully healed. Ishin asked them, and Oraheim immediately responded. Of course. You can count on us. She smiled at the 3 children. Hey, hot and clogs, Tatsuki called out, and Urahara sweat dropped. That was just going to be a thing, wasn't it? When do you think you'll be able to get your hands on those Asachi? Urahara took a moment to think. Well, I have to call Yoruchi to change it to 6 of them now, seeing as you 3 and Karen and Yuzu all will need one too. So, I'm not sure. Week? Maybe a few weeks? Depends on how lazy Yoruchi feels. Gotcha. Tatsuki nodded, before holding her hand out to Yuzu, who took it happily. Okay, we're out of here. Later, Ichigo. The group waved, before proceeding to head to the entrance of the hidden basement. Ranjiko sidled up to Ichigo. Are you okay? She asked him curiously. He looked down at her. Though tall for many women, she was still pretty short compared to him, huh? Should I not be? He asked cluelessly. She jerked her head at the entrance. Aren't you envious? What are you talking about? He asked, legitimately confused. She held back some exasperation. Most situations with two guys and two girls with childhood friend subplots don't end up with one guy getting both girls. She said dryly. He snorted. Oh, that's what you meant. Nah, I'm happy for them. Not compatible romantically. Haim and I gave it a try like 9 months ago, but it just ended up feeling awkward. We were better off as friends. Ah. Not much else to say, was there? Yeah, I suppose that makes sense. She giggled. Got a similar situation back in the Seriitii. Poor Hisagi. He's one of my fellow lieutenants. So obvious that he's into me, but no matter how many times I try to let him down gently, he just never takes a hint. He winced. Oof. He raised an imaginary bottle of mead in the poor dude's honor. Well now. Urahara smiled lazily as he walked up to them, now that they're safely away. His gaze turned serious, making Ranjiko stiffen. We have quite a bit to discuss. What's this about? Ranjiko asked, worriedly. Not here. Let's go find some place to sit. Ichigo told her. Something Urahara agreed with. It has to do with why Dad left his post, among other things. He looked at her, reminding her that yes, she was still supposed to be on his case about that. And, for that matter, Isshin gave her a hard look. What happened 100 years ago? Ranjiko's spine went as stiff as could be, as they found themselves in a very shielded and well-defended area even within the training ground. All 5 of them, with Tessai having rejoined them, sat at the table, and Ranjiko took a fortifying breath. Okay then. She said, speak. Very well then. Urahara said. Ichigo closed his eyes and crossed his arms, listening stoically as Urahara spoke. As for Ranjiko? Stoic was the last word one could use. This is bullshit. Ranjiko slapped her hands down on the table, getting the cups and plates to rattle on its surface. It's the truth. Urahara said evenly, I know full well you were already at least in training during that time period. Surely you remember the Seriitii losing 7 captains and 4 lieutenants in a single night. Of course, I do. Ranjiko said, but what I just don't understand is how he could possibly have gotten away with it. She ground her teeth, and she teared up slightly, and the thought strayed through her mind, Jin, you bastard. The worst part was, she could see that part being true, no matter how much she wished it wasn't. Her oldest friend had always been shifty, if she was putting it nicely. It was little wonder many in the Seriitii thought him a snake. He can get away with it because of his Zanpakuto. Isshin said gravely. But that makes no sense. She protested. Captain Aizen showed all of us his Zanpakuto. He gave all of the lieutenants a demonstration. It's a flowing water type Zanpakuto. It utilizes fog and distorted reflections to confuse enemies and make them kill each other. How can that possibly help and do what you're claiming? That clever son of a bitch. Ichigo grumbled under his breath. Then all of the lieutenants have already been ensnared. Urahara sighed. Aizen's Zanpakuto is not what you think it is. Its power is complete hypnosis. You think that's what his Zanpakuto does because that's what he wants you to think. I don't know the specifics of how it functions. He didn't deign to explain that much while he was gloating to Hirako Shinji. But he did explain what it did. This is madness. Ranjiko barely got the word out, gripping her hair in a tight fist. Why tell me this? Why now? Because they're starting to move. Isshin said gravely. Did you not think it strange, Matsumoto-san, for 6 hollows just shy of their evolution to Minos Grande to work together instead of eating one another? Urahara asked dryly. Ranjiko winced, and not only that, but one of them could turn completely invisible, and hide its Ryatsu to the point you couldn't detect it in the slightest until it attacked. He dipped his head, allowing his hat to shadow his face. Even for the Jurichi, that's beyond abnormal. We have a higher presence of hollows here, true, but it's a higher presence of hollows in general. Not a higher presence of strong hollows menos grande and just slightly weaker don't just waltz into the living world on a daily basis. And Ishin scoffed, it just so happened to happen when a high-level lieutenant not wearing her seal because of an unfortunate demotion arrived in the area. One who just so happened to personally know one of the captains in exile living in the city. He said dryly. Ichigo snorted, now I've smelled some bad fish at the market, but damn this one stinks. Wait, you think I was framed for the fire that led to me being here? Ranjiku gawked, those dirty little ohu. She growled, before taking a deep, calming breath, okay. Let's say I believe you. And at the very least, I admit that the situation is as suspicious as could be. What's the goal here? What's the endgame? Do you expect dash here? She looked at Ichigo, and no offense here, but a kid, even one as strong as Barry Cohen here, to take out Aizen? She glared at Kisuke, and unlike most of the current lieutenants, I am old enough to at least remember you. You even taught a class here or there at the academy. And most importantly, I remember you being a cagey bastard. Why are you being so forthcoming? Because if he dragged my kids into this without their explicit agreement, he knows I would be ripping his head off. Friend or no? Ishin replied evenly for the exile, a look of boredom on his face. Ma, that's a bit rude, Kurosaki-san. Urahara feigned a look of hurt. Ishin rolled his eyes, before giving him a look. So mean. A cloud appeared over the shopkeeper's head. The rest of them let out a few giggles. He let out a sigh, quite frankly, if you weren't Ishin's former lieutenant, I wouldn't be bothering to tell you any of this at all. Oh, that just makes me feel so much better. Ranjiko snarked, her eyebrow twitching. To put it bluntly, you being here is an unexpected parameter. He continued as if she hadn't spoken, if things happened as I believe, then I'm honestly a little stumped. This doesn't seem like it fits Aizen's MO. An unranked, less visible, and obviously weaker target to send to Karakura would have been the more obvious play. That by itself makes me believe you being here has nothing to do with you and everything to do with Ikamaru. Ichigo hummed, either a test of loyalty, or a punishment? Urahara turned to him in surprise, making Ichigo snort, just because my hair makes idiots think I'm a delinquent doesn't make me one. I'm in the top 10 in class. Urahara smiled, exactly so, Kurosaki-san. Okay, but why would he need to send someone here in the first place? She asked, what's so special about this town? Besides the obvious, I mean? We suspect that the hollow that attacked me when I made my first unauthorized trip to Naruki City was another one of his experiments. Ishin said, before side-eyeing his son, he'd want to see the results, and we've been hard at work keeping the city surveillance-free. Though the sheer number of hollows increasing in power that have been showing up tells us we probably didn't get all of them. The result dash she snapped her head to Ichigo, eyes wide in shock. Not me. My mom. Ichigo said, though with my power, I suppose I am the ultimate end result of it. Not something he could or would have actually planned for. Exactly so, Kurosaki-san. Urahara opened his fan and started using it on himself. Aizen would no doubt be very interested in you, even without seeing any of what you could do with his surveillance. If we did fail to counter all of them, he no doubt would have seen some of what you could do and would become even more interested in your potential. He is, after all, obsessed with becoming a perfect being, if my read of him is correct. If he happened to think that you were stagnating with no Zanpakuto and no training, he would have sent someone to remedy that. And since you're already strong, it could not be a weak, no-name Shinigami, because you would run circles around them to start with. If his plan worked flawlessly, even an injured lieutenant would be able to teach you more than an unseated officer. And so, he either framed me and my friends or spiked our drinks, leading to us doing something that could not be forgiven with a slap on the wrist, allowing him to send one of us down here with no seal on our power. But he knew that I couldn't do anything like getting him an Asachi, so he had me injured to draw your attention. Ranjiko caught onto the line of thought and clenched her fists angrily. Damn them! She punched the sitting table, making the empty cups fall over. Indeed. Urahara snapped his fan shut, but for all Aizen is a master tactician, he is not omniscient. While it is likely that he chose you to either punish Ikimara for something, or to test his loyalty, he likely believed that you were Ishin's lieutenant for too short a time to have truly formed a good relationship with him. In addition, Ishin had not left his body in decades, and always made it seem as if he possessed no spiritual power any longer. Finally, our counter-surveillance was focused most heavily on certain areas, primarily anything in a 3-kilometer radius around the Kurosaki household and the Shoten here. As such, he likely did not believe that Ishin would intervene once you were injured. You see, one of the reasons I was exiled from the Soul Society was that they discovered one of my inventions. All Jigai are constructed of highly concentrated Reisha in order to compensate for the power a Shinigami loses when possessing one. And consequently, all of the Jigai's actions can be tracked from the Soul Society, and it is inconceivable that a Shinigami and a Jigai could go missing. Ranjiko swallowed heavily. Where are you going with this? She felt cold, and could guess. She hoped she was wrong. Ichigo was also frowning, but not quite glaring at Urahara. It is simple. Urahara said, putting his fan down. Before I was captain of the 12th Division, I was the third seat of the Onmitsukido. The idea of the covert ops unit being unable to go truly undercover never sat well with us. And so, I attempted to create a Jigai that had no Reisha on its own, that could go truly off the grid, as it were. I am wearing one right now. As is Tessai. And as were you. But the prototype of that technology had a flaw. It would drain the Shinigami possessing it until they could never recover, leading to the soul losing all of its spiritual power. You put me in one? Ranjiko shrieked, reaching behind her back to grab her Zanpakuto. Ichigo's hand was like lightning as he grabbed her hand and kept her from drawing it. Were you even listening? He asked. Stop freaking out and pay attention. He said you were in the same model he was. Ranjiko paused, reviewed what had been actually said, and slumped, blushing, sorry. Ishin snorted, you haven't changed a bit. Urahara coughed. As I was saying, he drawled, a smirk on his face. The prototype drained a Shinigami's power, turning them into a normal human. While unintended, this ended up being a potentially useful feature. He said, after all, Aizen has been after one thing in particular since he became a Shinigami, breaking the barrier between Shinigami and Hollow. His experiments were on hollowification and Shinigamification. The hollow that infected Ichigo's mother was likely created expressly for that purpose. The both of us had been researching it for over 100 years, and I suspect we both independently arrived at the same answer. The only difference was, mine was more successful than his. When Hirako Shinji and his fellow captains and lieutenants did not fully hollowify, Aizen would have been interested in how I managed it. And he would have been salivating at the thought of getting his hands on the device I used to save them, the Hogyoku. Something I tried and failed to destroy, and have been keeping away from him for the past century. He tilted his head to the side. So what if I were given an injured Shinigami on a silver platter, in need of a Jigai? And said Shinigami would be none the wiser as to the existence of said item, and could have it implanted inside of them. And then, they were put in an untraceable Jigai that drained their power until they were turned into a normal human. Ranjiko's jaw dropped as Ichigo let out a shocked laugh, draining the Shinigami's power and the item along with it. You're a cold bastard, Urahara. I didn't do it though. Urahara whined childishly. No, but Aizen correctly assumed you would. The only monkey wrench was the person he sent. Ichigo shot back at him. Correct. He replied cheerfully, airing himself with his paper fan. Asshole. Ranjiko picked up her cup, beating him in the head with it. Yow! Urahara fell over. Tessai shook his head. You are much too forthcoming at times, Urahara-san. Ishin snickered beside him. Ranjiko crossed her arms. Alright, so Aizen is going to assume I have this stupid Hogyoku thing inside of me, right? What is his plan from there? Urahara shrugged his shoulders. It's easy enough to deduce. It is forbidden to give Shinigami powers to a human due to a past incident with a substitute Shinigami. You would be out of action for weeks, and maybe even months. You would have dropped off the radar. A human with Shinigami powers would have appeared. Case closed, you're under arrest. And then they collect the Hogyoku from me. Ranjiko closed her eyes. Not quite. Ishin said gravely, we did say this is possibly a test of loyalty or a punishment for Ikamaru. He closed his eyes, not seeing Ranjiko look at him. Urahara invented a method of hiding an item inside a soul, but that meant he also needed a way to remove it if it ever became necessary. But that method is known only to him, and Aizen would need to reverse engineer it using his fragmented research. The far easier option would be to evaporate your soul and collect the unharmed Hogyoku after. She blanched, staring at him in shock. Execution. Tessai rumbled, via the Sokayaku. Ranjiko continued to stare at her former captain, words failing her every time she opened her mouth. She trembled in place, looking down at her lap. Or what little she could see of it beyond her breasts. The words echoed in her head. Execution. And Jin would either have to allow it, or didn't care at all that it did. Her oldest friend. Either complicit or uncaring about her own death for something she would be framed for. And one of the kindest captains in the whole of the Seriitii, eagerly using her and then disposing of her for his own ends. Every person had a breaking point. Even someone strong and confident in themselves. Ranjiko had just found hers. Her bottom lip and chin quivered as she tried to speak, but all that came out was a sob as tears started leaking from her eyes. She didn't know who embraced her, but she latched onto him and buried her face in his neck and started to wail. When she started calming down, she became aware of someone gently rubbing her back. With a shuddering breath, she pulled back, realizing it had been Ichigo who had been taking care of her during her breakdown. She blushed a little, sorry. She mumbled. Ichigo raised an eyebrow, if I minded some tears, do you think I would have hugged you? She laughed wetly, before taking an offered tissue and blowing her nose. She wiped her face with another, and when she had stopped hiding behind it, she revealed a very hard look on her face. Ichigo smiled as they both stood, exiting the room, where they had been left alone by the other three adults. She glared at Urahara, what's the plan? Oh. He smiled slyly, I take it that means you're in? Like hell I'm letting them get away with this. She declared, so what's the damn plan? Well, my dear, Urahara snapped his fan open to hide his smile, I'm glad you asked. He said airily. Ranjiku-chan. Oraheim exclaimed, I wasn't expecting to see you back. Yeah, what gives? Tatsuki asked, didn't Haim manage to heal you yesterday? Ranjiku winced, sorry Haim-chan, but apparently those kinds of injuries are a bit more stubborn than we thought. I reverted a few hours later. Though it's not as bad as it was when it first happened. Sato narrowed his eyes behind his hair. Somehow, that explanation didn't sit too right with him. Oraheim had, to this point, never failed to heal anything before. Even when Tatsuki got a chunk of her arm bitten off by a hollow after getting a bit too cocky due to her powers, Oraheim had her right as rain in seconds. And there never had been a case where something she healed reverted. Ichigo. He said softly, what's going on? He asked his best friend in low tones, so that his two girlfriends would not overhear. Ichigo's voice was equally low, don't worry about it for now. He looked over at the orange-haired boy, and as always, simply gave him a nod. He always trusted Ichigo before. He would trust him now. Good. We can talk more at a later point. Ichigo told him, before Miss Oki walked in to start homeroom. Who? This is so much fun. Oraheim squealed as she dashed to and fro, vanishing in Shuunpa with every step. They were secluded on the rooftop of an abandoned building, with Ichigo on catching duty in case any of them accidentally ran off the roof. Holy shit, Ichigo. Tatsuki gaped, you're such a bad teacher. It only took Ranjiko 3 days to get Haim and Chad used to doing this. Sato himself had gotten it the slowest, and he was the slowest at it as well. But Oraheim was surprisingly speedy. Hell, I'm even better at it than I was. I couldn't do many steps without crashing before. A vein pulsed angrily on Ichigo's forehead, well excuse me for never having been taught anything. PFF, you can't just keep claiming instincts for your failures. She jeered at him. Mao, be nice, Tatsuki-chan. Oraheim looked at her girlfriend reproachfully. Tatsuki continued to jeer at Ichigo, smirking, "Nah, all he had to do was ask Gochin for some training. We could have been getting good training all year." Ranjika laughed as she watched, eyeing Ichigo as he started to look like he was about to blow a gasket. "Well, at least I'll never be bored. This is prime entertainment." "What was that?" Ichigo blared at Tatsuki. "Did you say, please kick my ass so hard I'll have to get sent to Soul Society and eaten by a manta ray?" And now the shoe was on the other foot, as lightning sprang between their eyes as they practically headbutt one another. Can do. The two started to fight, with Ichigo clearly the superior even with Tatsuki's improved speed. Ranjika called out, "Hey, watch it!" as she nervously watched a section of the roof crack. "We're on a roof, you idiots." Thunder rumbled as Ichigo, legs encased in lightning, tried to kick Tatsuki into the sky, only for that clang to ring out as she barely managed a perfect block. Oraheim let out a sigh and sat in Sato's lap, feeling him wrap his arms around her waist. "It's like putting two wet cats in a box." She giggled, and felt her boyfriend jerk a little as he tried to smother a surprised chuckle himself. Unbeknownst to them, they were not alone. High above them in the clouds, a spirit was watching. Oraheim. He hissed out, feeling ice-cold despair flood his body. On his chest was a chain. "Why have you forgotten me, Oraheim? Why have you abandoned me?" He looked almost rabid, with some light foam at the edges of his mouth, feeling nothing but agony as the final link on his chain grew teeth and started biting into the plate anchoring it to his chest. He cried out as his body exploded. "Ha!" Tatsuki and Ichigo stopped. "Did anyone else hear that?" "I did," Ranjika said, looking around but seeing nothing. She checked her soul pager, but also got nothing on it. Strange. Confused, the two shrugged and went back to fighting. "In Raku!" Oraheim gasped as her stuffed bear fell over. Sato and Tatsuki let her get up, eyes narrowed. They had both felt something, but it was well hidden. Sato grabbed his shirt and put it back on, while Tatsuki slipped her pants back up. Oraheim was still wearing her skirt, but only her bra up top. She kneeled in front of her favorite bear, picking him up. "Oh no! How'd you get torn?" The bear had a slice in the right side of its face, with stuffing starting to fall out. She then noticed red on her hand, and in an instant leapt back and let go of her bear as her hairpins flashed, her shield forming in front of her. A red arm erupted from Inraku, plowing into her shield, and making it flash before being rebuffed. The hollow crawled out of her bear, staring menacingly at them. Where before had been nothing, now the entire apartment reeked like hollow, with its Ryatsu engulfing them. "Stealth?" Tatsuki yelled in shock. "I couldn't sense it at all." "Oraheim." The hollow growled out, making them stiffen up. There was only one reason for a hollow to know one of them by name. Oraheim's shield dissolved from her shock. Sato took a step forward as his arms were covered in their armor. "Oraheim, let me dash." Oraheim held her arm out, stopping him from moving. Tears were leaking from her eyes as she dropped her arm. "Sora and I." The hollow recoiled a bit in intrigue. "Oh? So, you remember me, do you, Oraheim?" Oraheim let out a choked sob. "Of course I do, big brother." "Then why did you stop praying for me?" The hollow roared, jerking its head forward and spraying something from between its two front buck teeth. Oraheim hastily raised her shield again. The spray smashed into the shield and erupted outwards, but otherwise did nothing to it. The fluid itself started raining everywhere. Little droplets got on all of them, and started to burn. They all hissed and yelped as the acid ate away at their skin, and Oraheim rapidly had to heal them with her other Shunshan Rika. It only took moments, before they were fine. Sora hadn't been idle, and had experimentally cracked his tail on her shield. Again, the impact did nothing, and he howled madly. This is what I'm talking about. You prayed for me every day, Oraheim. Every day. I watched you. It made me happy. Your prayers always made things a little bit better for me. They eased my suffering. And then these three came into your life, and you never cared for me again. You prayed less and less, and after that, all you ever spoke about was them. You let these three tear us apart. You let me fade from your heart. Where the hell do you get off saying that? Ha? Tatsuki snarled, stomping forward and clenching her fists. She was furious. Do you have any idea how many times dash? Tatsuki, Oraheim said, cutting her girlfriend off. Her eyes were shadowed by her hair, her head dipped slightly as she looked at the ground. Go back to bed. Tatsuki and Sato both hesitated. Please? She asked them, brokenly. Tatsuki ground her teeth together, shaking impotently in fury and despair over what Oraheim was experiencing. Sato was no better, but he was more controlled than Tatsuki. He put his hand on her shoulder. She looked at it, before reaching up and squeezing it. It fucking hurts, Chad. I know. He rumbled, staring at the hollow like he wanted to vaporize it with his gaze alone. When you were born, you were like a daughter to me. You were more than a sister. Sora hissed, I raised you. Not those monsters that called themselves our parents. They beat you when you cried. I had to take care of you so that they wouldn't hear. And I took you from that cursed house the moment I could stand on my 2 feet. It was us against the world. Just the two of us. Forever. Tatsuki and Sato felt ice in their veins as the hollow spoke, hearing about Oraheim's past for the first time. Tatsuki started to cry. How? How had their Oraheim come out such a good soul raised in such a bad household? Sato clenched his fist, knowing in his heart that the answer to her unspoken question was the very same person who had now lost his way, standing before them. I raised you. I protected you. No one else can have you. Sora roared, charging at her. Oraheim dropped her shield, feeling her blood activate. She spread her arms and allowed her brother to bite her. His teeth weren't strong enough to penetrate her as she sobbed, bringing him closer and hugging him. I'm sorry. She sobbed, feeling the hollow freeze entirely. I'm sorry, Sora and I. Her voice wobbled as she squeezed his neck as best as she could. He was huge, after all. All I ever did was let you watch me be sad. You died for me, and all I ever did was make you feel worse. Make you see how much it hurt that you were gone. That I was alone. Her sobs intensified, so I hid it from you. I didn't want you to see how devastated I was. I started to share the fun things at school. The things that made me happy. The things I liked. The people that I liked. I just wanted you to see that I was happy, so you wouldn't suffer for me. She fell to her knees, from his limp mouth and stared up at him. I didn't realize I had just made things worse. That I was making you lonely. That you hadn't seen that I was happy and safe and moved on to the Soul Society. Oraheim. Sora breathed out, and from underneath his mask, twin rivulets of blood started leaking out. Oraheim. I'm so sorry. She wept, looking down at her clenched fists. I'm so sorry I hurt you, Sora and I love you so much. She reached up, trying to hide her face in shame behind her hands. And that drew his attention to her hair. Those hairpins. He gasped, recoiling. Why, you're wearing them. But you hated them. You threw them away. She looked up at him, saying hoarsely, Of course I do. Her lip trembled. They're all I had left of you. The only gifts you ever gave me. They're my treasures. Her face scrunched up. I always regretted that day. I was such a brat. Yelling at you because of something so stupid. Eating dinner silently. Not saying another word to you when you left for work. She inched forward on her knees, reaching out to him. Sora reared back, letting out a roar, before smashing his face on the floor and rocking the entire house. No! Stay back. Before I try to hurt you again. He turned away, looking to smash through the wall. But he slithered to a stop. Oraheim was in front of him once more, utilizing a simple shuanpa. Sora and I love you. She whispered, but you know I can't let you remain a hollow. You deserve rest and peace. If you leave, you'll never have either. You'll attack others. Hurt them. Eat them. I can't let you do that. I have to save you. Her hairpin glowed and one of the petals flew into her hand, forming her sword. Oraheim, please stop. I can dash. Tatsuki tried to get up and go over to her, but Sato just held her hand. Sara bowed his head to his sister. I love you too. Oraheim. I'm glad those hairpins can protect you now. His voice, once overlaid with a second, much more haunting voice, finally sounded human for the first time all night as Oraheim slashed his mask in half, revealing his face. He started turning into spirit particles and evaporating. I love you, Sara, and I. Oraheim said hoarsely, and there's something I always wish I had said to you, that day. What was it? More and more of his body had dispersed. Have a good day at work, big brother. She choked out. He smiled lovingly at his younger sister. And you at school, little Heim? Goodbye. He vanished entirely. Goodbye. Oraheim whispered, her sword returning to its place on her hairpin. She shuddered, bowing her head, goodbye. She sobbed, falling to her knees, and clapping her hands to her face. Her boyfriend and girlfriend both wrapped her up in the tightest hugs of her life, with Tatsuki sobbing along with her. Whoa! What happened, Heim? Ichigo asked, seeing the normally bright and bubbly Oraheim look morose and despondent. Do I have to kick someone's ass? Ranjiku walked over and gave her fellow buxom babe a hug, growing even more surprised when Oraheim teared up a bit and latched onto her. Sato was the one who spoke. Oraheim's brother hadn't left for Soul Society. He said softly, getting Ranjiku and Ichigo to stiffen. Oraheim wouldn't let either of us help her. He dipped his head, clenching his fists. She insisted on doing it herself. Ichigo cursed inside of his own head, but how? We never saw him. He walked over and embraced the two girls, squeezing them tight. Tatsuki sighed. He had this weird ability as a hollow. He was hiding inside Inraku. Maybe he did that as a ghost, too? Or simply watched her from afar? Are you going to be okay, Heim-chan? Ranjiku asked her new, much younger friend. I'll be fine. She wiped her tears with her arm and backed away, smiling bashfully. Sorry, it was just overwhelming, you know. All this time, I thought he was safe and happy and... She trailed off, before looking fully in the other direction. Shizuru-chan. What happened? You're bleeding. Indeed, Shizuru was on the ground, twitching, blood all over her face. Ranjiku realized what her and Oraheim's position must have looked like to the raging lesbian and started to laugh. A few weeks had passed since the incident with Oraheim's brother, and Sato was on one of his rare hangouts with friends that weren't his usual ones. A cursed parakeet? Sato asked, looking at the bird. His eyes were narrowed as he looked at it. It quite simply wasn't normal. Ha. His friend Harutoki told him, all of his previous owners up and died. No one really wants him, but he always finds someone anyway. What? And it ended up with his other friend Gitano started to ask, but Sato interrupted. I'll take him, he said, with finality. He grabbed the cage. What's your name? He asked the bird. The bird's beak opened, but then a loud clang sounded above them. Gitano and Harutoki both yelped as a steel girder weighing a couple 100 pounds was hurtling towards them. Sato stood, sensing a hollow, and held his hand up. The girder crashed into it and bent, not harming him in the slightest. Sato's eyes were narrowed even further. So, that's what's going on, he murmured under his breath. He turned back to the parakeet, sensing that the hollow run away. It had vanished from his senses. Thank you for saving me, mister. The parakeet spoke. My name is Shibata Yuichi. What's yours? Or rather, the young boy's soul locked inside of it spoke. Already, Sato could feel his blood boil at the thought of what had been done to this poor child. He put the girder down. Yasutora Sato. He replied. Why did that name sound familiar? He felt like it was one he should have recognized. Don't worry, Yuichi. I'll keep you safe. Damn, Chad, you got attached quick, huh? Gitano shook his head in exasperation, always falling for cute things. You're just salty, his girlfriends are so cute. Harutoki snorted. Sato rolled his eyes as they started to bicker. I'll catch you guys later, he told them, standing and taking Yuichi's birdcage. Shibata Yuichi? Ichigo said, sitting up straight. That. Tatsuki's expression morphed, isn't that? Did I miss something? Ranjiku asked, with Oraheim looking equally confused. They were ignored, making them pout, and you said there's a hollow after him? Yeah. It threw a steel girder at him yesterday. Sato confirmed, it seems intelligent too. I think I spooked it because it hasn't shown back up at all. Ichigo opened his mouth, only for an extremely loud voice to sound off behind him, Kurosaki. He then got kicked in the back, not budging even a centimeter as the voice yelped, falling back. It's like kicking a fucking wall. The boy was in their uniform with the blazer open, but looked several years too old to be wearing it. He also had 3 earrings on his left ear and a ring on his lip. Oh, you're off suspension, Oshima-san? Oraheim questioned, before taking a sip of her juice. I ain't talking Taya, Oshima roared, glaring at Ichigo's back. When are you going to dye that carrot piss hair black, huh? Why are you always trying to look like me? Ichigo turned around, and before the delinquent knew what had happened, Ichigo had his entire face in an iron grip, leaving only his eyes exposed. He even lifted him off his feet. I'm not in the mood, drag queen, he stated, squeezing so tightly that the boy started to let out a muffled scream. Fuck off and leave us alone, or next time I'm going to kill you, he said, before negligently tossing the screaming delinquent across the roof. He skipped almost like a stone, before crashing into the roof entrance. He looked at the idiot's friend, who was backing away with a wet stain in front of his pants. Ichigo gave him such an ice-cold look that he nearly passed out. Scram! Ichigo hissed, and the boy yelped, before turning and running as fast as his legs would allow. Berry-kun. Ranjiku stared at him, wide-eyed. Kurosaki-kun, what was that? Oraheim was also looking shocked. Ichigo was normally never so, cold with the idiots who tried to fight him. Not anymore. Not when he could flick them in the chest and break a rib. She was honestly tempted to go check on the idiot. Shibata Yuichi, Tatsuki said, is the name of a young boy who was attacked by a serial killer 5 years ago. Oh. Sato's spiritual power spiked, that's why he sounded familiar. Ichigo cracked his knuckles. His mother was murdered, leaving the young boy traumatized and nearly catatonic. 3 years passed, and then he was found dead, strangled. Oraheim and Ranjiku gasped, realizing what must have happened and why Ichigo and Tatsuki were so upset. He turned to look at the boy. Isn't that right, Yuichi? The parakeet looked panicked, and no. He lied. Why, you must be thinking of someone else. What did the hollow promise you, Yuichi-chan? Ranjiku kneeled before him, reaching into the cage and running her finger gently on his head. The parakeet let out a few noises. He said he would bring Mom back to life. The bird made some noises that weren't human. The bird version of tears, perhaps. Other than Ranjiku, who was looking at him, everyone else relevant on the roof had their faces shadowed by sheer, blinding fury. Even the kind and normally peace-loving Oraheim was ready to use her fists when she got her hands on this hollow. He was the one that killed Mom. The one who attacked us. He turned into that thing and came back for me, because I made him fall and he died too. Ranjiku only kept her own rage off her face with sheer discipline. He told me that since he killed her, he could bring her back. If I could run from him for 3 months straight, he'd bring her back. But if I got caught, he would restart the timer each time. The young boy started to sob. I just want my mommy back. He covered his head with his wing. Oh, Yuichi. Ranjiku said, her heart breaking for the poor boy. There's no force in the life or afterlife that can simply bring a human back to life. She told him, watching as the boy flinched, your mother is waiting for you in the Soul Society. She would have been sent on years ago. Yuichi gasped, then? I'm so sorry, little one. That monster has been fooling you all this time. The only way you'll be able to see your mommy again is to find her in the Soul Society. Ranjiko told him, her face sad. Nothing that monster said is true. Sato stood, crunching through the solid steel of the fence as he did so. I'll kill him, he said, eyes blazing with sheer rage. Get in line. Tatsuki snarled, cracking her knuckles. How are we going to find this sick fuck? Sato said he got spooked. I don't care how scared he is. Ichigo snarled, red bleeding slightly into his vision as he closed his eyes. He knew what Hollow Ryatsu felt like, possessing his own. So, unlike most Shinigami, when combined with one of his hollow techniques, Pesquisa, he could manifest Ryuraku for hollows as well. Hundreds of white ribbons manifested, and he searched for the black one. He knew the damn thing would be close by. Perhaps even hiding in the realm between realms inside a Garganta, barely leaving it open so he could peek on the outside world. He found it and grabbed it, tasting the evil Ryatsu. This one was even worse than normal hollows. It had an extra flavor of maliciousness. Ichigo vanished in Sonido, soaring into the sky before any of his friends could even react. Rah! He roared, stabbing his clawed hand forward, flaring with hollow Ryatsu. His hand pierced the air like it was solid, and he found purchase on something solid on the other side. His fingers stabbed down into it, and he yanked. With the sound of shattering glass, the large hollow was pulled shrieking from the realm between realms, leaving a tear in the air peering into a gaping void. With a mental command, the Garganta closed, as he rocketed off to a more secluded area, the Karakura Community Park. It was a forested area, so no chance of anyone unaware seeing something they shouldn't. With the sound of thunder, Ichigo arrived in his landing zone and chucked the hollow forward, forcing it to dig a trench in the dirt with its body. With the sound of swishing cloaks, he felt his friends arrive as well. Is he the one, Yuichi? Sato asked, letting Ranjiko off his back and setting down Yuichi's cage. Yes. Yuichi sounded completely awed by what he had just seen. Tatsuki stomped over as the hollow, still utterly bamboozled and shocked by what in the fuck had just happened to it, struggled to get up. So, you like murdering women and children, huh? She snarled, stomping down on its leg, and ripping it off at the knee. The hollow proved its namesake and shrieked. It scrambled to get away, opening its large wings and attempting to fly away. Oraheim appeared in the air above it, her Shurten Koshin forming in front of her. It hit the glowing shield, and shot back at the ground as though fired out of a cannon. You will not escape. The look of wrath on her face combined with her halo and wings made her look like an avenging angel. Shrieker groaned, getting to his feet. He had a gorilla-like body despite those wings, with black fur around its neck and sides. Who the fuck are all of you? He asked, trying to figure out how he was going to get away. He was using one of his arms to hold himself up. He had regeneration, but he would need to eat unlike other hollows. Get the fuck away from me. It hunched over, spewing dozens of strange-looking bug lizard things from his back. They all swarmed at the targets, spitting out hundreds of leeches. All of them got hit by them. There were too many not to. Ack, yuck. Gotcha. Shrieker stuck his green, tuning fork-shaped tongue out of his mouth and whistled. Immediately, every single leech exploded violently, engulfing Ichigo and his friends in explosions. Sato San. Yuichi yelled in shock. Wahahaha. Shrieker roared with laughter, you've outdone yourself this time, boy. Such delicious souls. I might even evolve once I've eaten them. The smoke cleared, revealing them completely unharmed. Before Shrieker could even parse that, Ichigo had punched him in the teeth, grabbing onto his tongue. I'm sorry, who are you going to eat, again? He ripped his hand back, tearing the appendage clean off and shattering a few teeth. Shrieker roared again, swinging with a wild, delirious haymaker at Ichigo. Tatsuki appeared in his path, and took the punch with her royal guard. The hit powered her up, and she immediately unleashed the stored energy in an absolutely savage punch to Shrieker's gut. The hollow nearly folded in half as its feet slid backwards, tearing up the earth. It slid right into Ichigo's waiting arms. He grabbed it by its midsection and roared his fury out as he threw it over his head with a German suplex. He buried the hollow all the way down to its hips in the dirt. Its legs almost looked hilarious sticking out of the huge crater he had just created. They were even twitching, desperately trying to get itself out. "You're going overboard. We'll need to fix this later." Ranjiko let out a sigh. She couldn't honestly blame them though. Rare was the hollow that you knew for a fact deserved every ounce of pain coming to it. Sato didn't listen to her. He walked over as Ichigo walked away, clapping the dirt off his hands. His left arm was engulfed in the white and red armor of his Brazo Izquierda del Diablo. He grabbed the hollow by the leg and yanked him out like a carrot. Shrieker tried to punch him, and it connected. And it did nothing. Even without Sato utilizing his blunt. He dropped the hollow, and it twisted onto its knees. Shrieker finally realized what was going on, and defaulted to what all bullies who understood they'd gone too far did, begging, "No. Please. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I'll never do it again. I'll never her dash." Sato's 5 fingers had been sparking, and he closed his fist, La Muerte. He growled, punching it right below its hollow hole. Its body exploded, with the image of a skull forming behind it for a bare moment. Its mask started to crack as Shrieker screamed one last time. An unusual energy was emanating from the cracks. They felt all of the escaping souls moving away towards the Soul Society, but Shrieker wasn't dissolving. A white light went straight down and up high into the air, and then a huge purple door with various locking chains and 2 skeletons appeared behind it. Oraheim gasped, so, it really was true. She bowed her head. It's the first time any of us have seen it. It's honestly incredibly rare. Ranjiko let out a sigh, watching as a gigantic arm appeared as the door opened. A very evil-sounding laugh rang out, before Shrieker was stabbed by a huge knife. Its body hung in the air like a macabre statue before it and the knife drew back into the portal. The doors slammed shut, sealed, and dissipated. Yuichi trembled inside the parakeet. That was the Soul Society? Mom was in that scary place? Oh shit. Ichigo cursed under his breath, mirrored by his other friends. How could they have been such idiots? They had wanted him to see his tormentor be defeated, hoping it would help him heal. But it might have just backfired and traumatized him further. No. Ranjika gasped, "Kami, no, Yuichi-chan. That was hell. You see, those monsters aren't always bad people. The sins they commit as monsters can't be held against them. When a Shinigami purified their souls, they are allowed into the afterlife. But those who were evil while they were alive cannot have those sins forgiven. They go to hell. I promise, your mommy is waiting for you somewhere on the other side, in the happy place. You just need to find her. You'll never even grow hungry unless you have potential as a Shinigami too." "Oh." Yuichi sighed in relief, "Okay. See, can I go see her now?" "Of course." Ranjiko smiled at him. "None of us can send you on, but we have a friend who can. We'll go there right away, right guys?" "Yeah." Ichigo smiled, relieved they hadn't made things worse for the boy. Sato walked over, "Come on, Yuichi. Let's go send you to your mom." He looked at Ranjiko, "Uraharas?" "Yeah." She replied, hopping into Ichigo's arms with a cheeky smile. Ichigo smirked at her, and they all vanished from the forest. That wraps up this part of What If Ichigo Had a Different Zanpakuto. New episodes drop every 4 days, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it with fellow fans. Don't forget to check the description for the fanfic title and author. Your support means a lot to them. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.